How to Destroy Procrastination Forever and Achieve Anything. This audiobook will teach you how to conquer procrastination once and for all by working with your brain, not against it. You'll discover how to decode procrastination's hidden messages, turn delay into momentum, and unlock your full potential with practical strategies that actually stick. If you've been waiting for the perfect time to start changing your life, this is it. Introduction. For decades, we've approached procrastination as the enemy, a character flaw to overcome, a bad habit to break, a weakness to eliminate. We've been bombarded with time management techniques, productivity hacks, and motivation strategies, all designed to cure us of this supposed ailment. But what if our fundamental understanding of procrastination has been completely backward? The truth is, procrastination isn't your enemy. It's a sophisticated feedback mechanism, carefully crafted by evolution to protect and serve you. When understood correctly, it becomes clear that procrastination isn't a bug in our mental programming. It's a feature. It's your brain's way of flagging important information about your decisions, your environment, and your true priorities. Think about it. Why would a trait that supposedly hinders our success persist so strongly in human behavior? From an evolutionary standpoint, truly destructive traits tend to be eliminated over time. Yet procrastination remains prevalent across cultures, generations, and achievement levels. This suggests it serves a deeper purpose, one that until now we've failed to recognize and harness. The conventional wisdom tells us to fight against procrastination, to overcome it through sheer willpower and rigid systems. But this approach is like trying to silence a car's check engine light without addressing what triggered it. Just as that warning light communicates crucial information about your vehicle's health, procrastination signals important data about your mental and emotional state, your decision-making process, and your relationship with time itself. This book introduces the momentum matrix, a groundbreaking framework that transforms procrastination from a source of shame into a powerful tool for success. Unlike traditional approaches that treat procrastination as a problem to solve, the momentum matrix reveals how to decode and harness procrastination's hidden messages, turning what seems like your greatest weakness into your competitive advantage. You'll discover why feeling guilty about procrastination only reinforces the cycle, and how traditional productivity advice often backfires by ignoring the sophisticated psychological mechanisms at play. More importantly, you'll learn how to work with your natural rhythms instead of against them, creating a sustainable approach to achievement that doesn't require constant willpower or rigid self-discipline. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming powerful. It's about understanding that your tendency to procrastinate isn't a character flaw, but a sophisticated internal guidance system waiting to be properly interpreted and utilized. When you learn to decode its signals, procrastination transforms from a source of shame into a catalyst for deeper insight, better decisions, and more meaningful action. You've already taken the first step by opening this book. Unlike other productivity guides that shame you into action, this journey will transform your relationship with time itself. You're about to discover why what you've previously seen as your greatest weakness might actually be your hidden superpower. The clock is ticking, but for once, time is on your side. Chapter 1. The Intelligence in Action. Paradox. Alex Rivera sat in his dimly lit home office, staring at the lines of code that represented 3 years of his life's work. His AI algorithm for predictive healthcare was revolutionary. Everyone said so. 5 venture capital firms had already expressed serious interest, with 2 making concrete offers. Yet here he was, at 2 a.m., tweaking code that was already working perfectly, finding new reasons not to push forward with the launch. Just one more optimization, he muttered to himself, knowing deep down that this wasn't about perfecting the code anymore. "I don't understand what's wrong with me," Alex confided to his mentor during their weekly video call. "I know the algorithm works, The preliminary results are better than anything else on the market. But every time I get close to finalizing the launch, I find myself diving back into the code, convinced there's something more to improve. His mentor's response surprised him. Have you considered that your procrastination might actually be serving a purpose? This scenario plays out more often than you might think among highly capable individuals. The more intelligent and skilled you are, the more sophisticated your procrastination becomes. You're not just avoiding work. You're engaging in what appears to be productive activity, all while postponing the main event. This is what I call the intelligence in action paradox. Take the real-life example of Adam Grant, the acclaimed organizational psychologist and author. While writing his groundbreaking book Originals, Grant found himself repeatedly delaying the writing process. But something unexpected happened during those periods of apparent procrastination. Rather than resulting in a rushed, inferior product, these delays led to deeper insights about creativity and innovation. Grant discovered that moderate procrastination can actually enhance creative thinking and problem-solving, challenging the common belief that immediate action is always better. The key insight here isn't that procrastination is universally good or bad. It's that highly intelligent individuals often use procrastination as an unconscious incubation period for ideas. When you find yourself engaging in productive procrastination, you're not just avoiding work. You're often allowing your mind to process complex problems in the background, leading to more innovative solutions. Jennifer, a product designer at a major tech company, learned to harness this principle to transform her relationship with procrastination. I used to beat myself up for not immediately jumping into new projects, she shares. But I noticed that my best designs often came after periods where I seemed to be dragging my feet. What looked like procrastination to others was actually my brain processing multiple approaches and possibilities. Jennifer developed a system she calls conscious delay, where she deliberately builds in what she previously would have considered procrastination time. Rather than forcing immediate action, she allows herself a set period for what appears to be unrelated activities, reading, sketching, or working on minor tasks. The difference is that now I trust this process instead of fighting it, she explains. When I finally sit down to work on the main project, I come with clearer insights and more innovative solutions. This isn't permission to indefinitely postpone important work. Rather, it's about recognizing that what feels like procrastination might actually be your mind's way of working through complex problems. The key is learning to distinguish between destructive procrastination, avoiding work out of fear or habit, and constructive procrastination, allowing time for deeper processing and insight. Like Alex Rivera, you might find that your tendency to delay isn't simply a failure of will. It's often a sophisticated mental process seeking optimal solutions. Alex eventually realized that his constant code refinements weren't just avoidance. They were his brain's way of ensuring he had considered every possible scenario and implication of his algorithm. When he finally launched, his product was more robust and well thought out than if he had rushed to market at the first opportunity. Take a moment now to reflect. Think about your most successful project. How many of your best ideas came during periods of productive delay rather than immediate action? What might this tell you about your optimal creative process? Chapter 2. Your Brain's Hidden Patterns. Dr. Sarah stood in the operating room, her steady hands navigating through one of the most complex brain surgeries of her career. A tumor, deeply embedded in the patient's temporal lobe, required absolute precision and unwavering focus. Not once during the 6-hour procedure did she hesitate or delay a single decision. Yet back in her office, a stack of routine paperwork had been sitting untouched for weeks, growing taller by the day. Insurance forms, patient follow-ups, and department reviews, all crucial but somehow impossible to start. It doesn't make sense, she confided to her colleague during a rare coffee break. I can make split-second decisions with someone's life in my hands, but asking me to fill out a standard evaluation form feels like climbing Mount Everest. This stark contrast in her behavior wasn't just an isolated quirk. It was a window into how our brains process different types of tasks, and why the conventional understanding of procrastination as a simple character flaw misses the mark entirely. Dr. Caroline Leaf's journey from struggling graduate student to pioneering neuroscientist offers a fascinating glimpse into this phenomenon. Early in her academic career, Leaf found herself consistently postponing writing assignments while excelling in hands-on research. Rather than accepting this as a personal failure, she turned her scientific curiosity toward understanding the neural mechanisms at play. What I discovered changed everything, Leaf explains. Through neuroimaging studies, we found that different types of tasks activate distinct neural pathways. The brain doesn't view all activities through the same lens. It processes them differently based on their nature, urgency, and the type of cognitive engagement they require. Think about your own patterns for a moment. You might find yourself readily tackling certain challenging tasks while consistently avoiding others that seem objectively easier. This isn't random. It's your brain following deeply ingrained neural pathways that have been shaped by experience, emotion, and biological predisposition. Maya Patel's story illustrates how understanding these patterns can transform productivity. As a tech startup founder, Maya struggled with an inconsistent work rhythm that baffled her team. She could code for hours without breaks, but would procrastinate endlessly on investor presentations. The traditional productivity advice, just push through, use timers, break tasks into smaller chunks, did nothing to address the root cause. I was fighting against my brain's natural patterns instead of working with them, Maya recalls. Once I understood that different tasks activated different neural pathways, I stopped treating all work as interchangeable blocks of time. This insight led her to develop what we now call the task type template, a revolutionary approach to workflow management based on neural activation patterns. The science behind this is fascinating but straightforward. When you engage in a task that aligns with your brain's preferred activation patterns, you experience what neuroscientists call flow state, that effortless sense of being in the zone. Conversely, tasks that require different neural pathways can feel like pushing against an invisible barrier, triggering procrastination as your brain seeks activities that match its preferred activation patterns. Consider Dr. Martinez's case again. During surgery, her brain operates in a state of focused, real-time decision-making, activating neural pathways that have been strengthened through years of training and experience. The immediate feedback and clear consequences create an environment where procrastination isn't even a consideration. Administrative paperwork, however, activates different neural pathways associated with abstract planning and delayed rewards, areas where her brain hasn't developed the same strong neural connections. This understanding led to a breakthrough in how we approach procrastination. Instead of viewing it as a uniform behavior to be overcome through sheer willpower, we can now map our personal procrastination profile based on how different tasks interact with our brain's natural tendencies. Maya's implementation of this approach transformed her company's productivity. We stopped treating all tasks as equal and started mapping them according to their neural engagement patterns, she explains. Team members now track their natural rhythms and task preferences, allowing us to align assignments with individual brain patterns rather than forcing everyone into the same productivity template. The implications of this research extend far beyond individual productivity. Organizations that have implemented neural pattern-based task assignment report significant improvements in both efficiency and employee satisfaction. When people work in alignment with their brain's natural patterns rather than against them, procrastination naturally decreases while engagement and quality of work increase. This brings us to your challenge for the next 24 hours. Instead of fighting against your procrastination, you're going to study it with scientific curiosity. Every time you notice yourself delaying a task, document not just what you're avoiding, but what you're gravitating toward instead. What activities feel effortless? When do you find yourself in a flow state? What types of tasks consistently trigger procrastination? Create your personal procrastination profile by noting the specific tasks you're avoiding, the activities you turn to instead, the time of day these patterns occur, your energy levels and emotional state during these moments, any external factors that might influence your behavior. This isn't just another productivity log. It's a neural mapping exercise that will reveal the unique way your brain processes different types of tasks. Understanding these patterns is the first step toward transforming procrastination from an enemy into a valuable source of information about how your brain works best. As Dr. Leaf discovered in her research, when we stop fighting our brain's natural patterns and start working with them, procrastination ceases to be a problem to solve and becomes a tool for optimization. Your procrastination profile will serve as a foundation for the strategies we'll explore in the coming chapters, each building upon this fundamental understanding of your brain's unique processing patterns. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate procrastination entirely. It's to understand it well enough to harness it. Just as Dr. Martinez eventually developed a system that worked with her brain's patterns rather than against them, you'll learn to align your work with your natural neural rhythms, turning what once felt like a weakness into a source of strength. Chapter 3. The Time Illusion. James Morton sat in his car, staring blankly at his phone as the reality of what just happened began to sink in. The email from the venture capital firm was polite but firm. While we were impressed with your initial presentation, your failure to submit the final documentation by the deadline indicates a lack of readiness for Series A funding. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. 2 years of work, gone. His revolutionary healthcare app, designed to help rural communities access specialist care, would remain just another great idea. The worst part? He'd been absolutely certain he had another week to prepare those documents. The deadline hadn't snuck up on him. He'd simply been operating in a different reality when it came to time. I could have sworn we were still in early March, he whispered to himself, the morning sun casting long shadows across his dashboard. But calendar facts don't lie. It was March 15th, not March 8th, as he'd convinced himself. The deadline had been clearly stated, March 14th at midnight. His team had reminded him repeatedly. Yet somehow, in his mind, next week had felt as real and solid as the steering wheel under his trembling hands. This phenomenon, this dangerous disconnect between our perception of time and its actual passage, isn't unique to James. It's what I call the time illusion, and it's arguably the most insidious form of procrastination, because it doesn't feel like procrastination at all. When you're caught in its grip, you genuinely believe you have more time than you do. Warren Buffett's early career offers a fascinating glimpse into this challenge. While many know him as the Oracle of Omaha, few are aware of his early struggles with time management and procrastination. In my 20s, Buffett once shared, I lost several promising investment opportunities not because I couldn't analyze the companies, I could do that in my sleep, but because I fundamentally misunderstood the nature of time itself. This admission led to the development of his famous two-list strategy, though its origins as a tool for combating the time illusion aren't widely known. Buffett's breakthrough came when he realized that his perception of time was as important as his perception of market value. I needed to treat time with the same respect I gave to money, he explained. You wouldn't casually miscount your dollars by a factor of 2, so why do we so easily miscount our days? Lisa Chen, a marketing executive at a Fortune 500 company, experienced a similar awakening. Her story perfectly illustrates both the problem and the solution. I was known as the deadline crusher, she recalls. I prided myself on working well under pressure, pulling all-nighters to deliver campaigns at the last minute. I thought this was just my process, until it nearly cost me everything. The campaign was for a major client, a multinational corporation looking to rebrand their entire product line. Lisa had 6 weeks to prepare. In her mind, 6 weeks felt like an ocean of time. "I'll start the serious work next week," she told herself. "I work better under pressure anyway." But next week became the week after, and suddenly she found herself with just days to complete what should have been a month-long process. "What happened next changed my entire approach to time," Lisa explains. "I was working on the presentation at 3 a.m., running on nothing but coffee and panic, when I had a moment of absolute clarity. I wasn't actually working better under pressure, I was just working. All those times I thought I needed the deadline breathing down my neck, that was just a story I told myself to justify poor time perception." This realization led Lisa to develop what would later become the Time Reality Reset, a practical system for recalibrating how we perceive and interact with time. The system emerged from her understanding that time perception is not fixed. It's a skill that can be developed and refined. To understand how this works, let's follow 2 parallel scenarios that played out in Lisa's department after she implemented the Time Reality Reset. Both involved launching major marketing campaigns with similar 6-week timelines. In the first scenario, Team A operated under the traditional model, the one most of us use by default. They looked at the 6-week timeline and immediately fell into what psychologists call temporal optimization, the belief that future you will somehow be more capable, more efficient, and have more time than present you. "We have plenty of time," became their mantra. Week 1 passed in planning meetings that could have been emails. Week 2 was spent gathering inspiration, which mostly meant browsing competitor websites and discussing abstract concepts. By week 4, they had nothing concrete to show, but still felt like they had enough time. It wasn't until week 5 that panic set in, leading to a frantic rush that produced subpar work and left the team burned out. In contrast, Team B applied the Time Reality Reset. They started by doing what Lisa calls time translation, converting the 6-week timeline into concrete working hours. 6 weeks suddenly became 30 working days, which translated to roughly 240 working hours. Then they subtracted time for meetings, emails, and other routine tasks, leaving them with about 180 hours for actual campaign work. When you see it in hours instead of weeks, something shifts in your brain, Lisa explains. 6 weeks feels like forever, but 180 hours? That feels real, tangible, limited. Team B then broke down their deliverables into hour estimates, a process that revealed they actually needed closer to 160 hours for quality work. This left them with just 20 hours of buffer, a far cry from the plenty of time illusion that typically plagues 6-week projects. The results? Team A delivered a campaign that met basic requirements, but missed several opportunities for innovation and refinement. Team B, working with their recalibrated time perception, delivered work that exceeded client expectations and included several innovative elements that only became possible because they had time to iterate and refine. The difference wasn't in the team's capabilities or even their work ethic. The difference was in their perception of time and, consequently, how they used it. Team B's success stemmed from understanding what I call the time reality principle. Time is neither flexible nor renewable. Unlike money, you can't earn more of it, and unlike resources, you can't stockpile it for future use. This principle formed the foundation of Warren Buffett's approach to time management. Time, he noted, is the only truly limited resource we have. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time. Lisa's time. Reality Reset System builds on this understanding through 3 key phases. recognition, recalibration, and reinforcement. The recognition phase involves acknowledging your current time perception distortions, those moments when you genuinely believe you have more time than you do. Recalibration focuses on translating abstract time periods into concrete units of work, while reinforcement creates systems to maintain this more accurate time perception. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of the time reality reset is its ability to transform anxiety into action. When James Morton, our healthcare app developer, finally got back on his feet, he used this system to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. Understanding my time illusion triggers changed everything, he reflects. I stopped seeing time as this vague, expansive thing and started treating it like the precious, finite resource it is. Your challenge now is to begin your own time reality reset journey. For the next 3 days, maintain a time perception log. Every time you make a decision about when to start or complete a task, write down your initial time estimate for the task, the actual time it took to complete, the gap between when you planned to start and when you actually started. Any rationalizations or thoughts about time that occurred to you. This isn't just about tracking time. It's about understanding your personal time illusions. Pay special attention to phrases like, "I still have plenty of time," or "I'll start this next week." These are often signals that you're falling into the time illusion trap. Remember, the goal isn't to become perfect at time estimation. Rather, it's to develop a more realistic relationship with time itself. As Warren Buffett discovered, success often comes not from managing time better, but from perceiving it more accurately in the first place. Your time perception log will serve as a foundation for the deeper work we'll do in the coming chapters. By understanding your personal time illusions, you'll be better equipped to implement the advanced strategies we'll explore for turning procrastination into productivity. Chapter 4. The Pain Behind Procrastination. Let me share something that might surprise you. 83% of the workforce admits to procrastinating at least 1 hour daily. But here's what's truly fascinating. Brain imaging studies show that procrastination triggers the same neural pathways as physical pain. This isn't about laziness or poor time management. You're not avoiding work. You're avoiding emotional discomfort. Think about that for a moment. Every time you put off an important task, your brain is essentially trying to protect you from pain. It's a survival mechanism gone awry in our modern world. But understanding this changes everything about how we approach procrastination. I witnessed this revelation firsthand while working with Dr. Brené Brown during her groundbreaking research on shame and vulnerability. Few people know that Brown's insights into procrastination came from an unexpected place, her own struggle while writing her seminal work on shame resilience. "I found myself reorganizing my entire office instead of writing," she confided during one of our conversations. "It wasn't until I applied my own research lens to my behavior that I realized I wasn't avoiding the writing. I was avoiding the vulnerability of putting my ideas out into the world." This discovery led Brown to develop what she initially called her vulnerability inventory, a tool she used to decode her own procrastination patterns. What she found was revolutionary. Behind every procrastinated task lay a fear of emotional exposure, judgment, or failure. The same patterns emerged when she expanded her research to include hundreds of participants. "The irony wasn't lost on me," Brown shared. "Here I was, researching shame and vulnerability, while using procrastination as my own shield against those very emotions." This personal insight transformed into a methodology for building courage that has helped thousands overcome their procrastination barriers. Consider the story of Raj Patel, a technology executive turned public speaker. Despite his expertise, Raj found himself consistently delaying presentation preparation until the last possible moment. "I told myself it was because I worked better under pressure," he explains. "But when I really examined it, I realized I was avoiding the discomfort of confronting my fear of judgment. Using what we now call the fear to fuel framework, Raj began approaching his procrastination differently. Instead of beating himself up for delaying, he started treating his procrastination as valuable data. Each instance of delay became a clue about an underlying fear that needed addressing. The transformation was remarkable. I started asking myself what I was really avoiding each time I felt the urge to procrastinate, Raj recalls. Was it fear of criticism? Fear of not meeting expectations? Fear of success and the increased responsibility it might bring? By identifying these core fears, he could address them directly, rather than letting them drive his behavior unconsciously. What's particularly interesting about Raj's case is how he turned his procrastination pattern into a structured creativity process. I realized that my tendency to delay wasn't just about fear. It was also my brain's way of processing information and generating ideas. Once I understood this, I could harness it constructively. This leads us to a crucial understanding. Procrastination isn't your enemy. It's a messenger. Each time you feel that urge to delay, your brain is trying to tell you something important about your fears, your needs, or your readiness for a particular task. Let's pause here for a moment of honest reflection. Take out your journal or open a new note on your phone. I want you to think about the 3 tasks you most consistently procrastinate on. Write them down. Now, for each task, complete this sentence 3 different ways. What I'm really afraid of is... Don't rush this exercise. Sit with each fear as it emerges. You might be surprised by what surfaces. Some fears might seem obvious. Fear of failure, fear of criticism. Others might be more subtle. Fear of success, fear of outgrowing relationships, fear of having to maintain a new standard of excellence. Remember, this isn't about judgment. You're not trying to eliminate these fears. You're simply bringing them into the light where they can be examined and understood. As Dr. Brown often says, the only way out is through. By acknowledging these fears, you begin to loosen their grip on your behavior. Chapter 5. Breaking Free from the Perfectionism Trap. The perfect moment never arrives because perfection itself is an illusion. This truth hit me like a thunderbolt while watching Simone Biles during the 2016 Olympics. What most viewers saw was flawless execution. What they missed was the years-long internal battle that almost prevented her from stepping onto that mat at all. Few people know that Biles, arguably the greatest gymnast of all time, once struggled with what her coaches called training paralysis. She would spend hours repeating the same routine, seeking an impossible standard of perfection that left her mentally exhausted and physically at risk of injury. I used to think that if I couldn't do something perfectly in practice, I wasn't ready for competition, Biles shared during one of our conversations. It was paralyzing. I'd rather not try than risk doing it imperfectly. This perfectionism paradox, where the pursuit of excellence actually prevents excellence, isn't unique to Olympic athletes. It's a pattern I've witnessed countless times across all fields of human endeavor. The higher the achiever, the more likely they are to fall into this trap. But Biles' story reveals something crucial about breaking free from it. The turning point came when her coach, Cecile Landy, introduced what they called the progress mindset. Instead of chasing perfect routines, Biles began focusing on incremental improvements. It completely changed how I approach training, Biles explains. Instead of asking, "Is this perfect?" I started asking, "Is this better than yesterday?" The irony is, when I stopped obsessing over perfection, my performances actually improved. This shift mirrors what I witnessed while working with Claire Zhang, a marketing director at a Fortune 500 company. Claire was known for her brilliant campaigns, but also for missing deadlines because she couldn't stop tweaking her work. I had this voice in my head constantly whispering, "Not good enough," she recalls. I'd spend hours adjusting font sizes by fractions of a point, rewriting sentences that were already clear, searching for problems that didn't exist. The cost of Claire's perfectionism became clear when she lost a major promotion opportunity. Despite creating objectively superior work, her inability to release projects in a timely manner was holding her back. This wake-up call led us to develop what I now call the excellence calibration method. The method began with a simple but powerful question. What would happen if this work was only 80% perfect? Claire started experimenting with intentionally submitting work that wasn't perfect by her standards. The results surprised her. Not only did nobody notice the small imperfections I'd been obsessing over, but the faster turnaround time actually led to better outcomes for the company. Through this process, Claire developed 3 key insights that transformed her relationship with perfectionism. First, she learned to distinguish between essential excellence and unnecessary polishing. I realized that perfect is often the enemy of effective, she says. A good campaign launched on time outperforms a perfect campaign launched too late. Second, she discovered that imperfect action creates more opportunities for real improvement than perfect inaction. By releasing work faster, she could gather actual feedback instead of relying on her assumptions about what needed improvement. This led to her third insight. Perfectionism often masks a fear of judgment rather than a genuine pursuit of excellence. These insights evolved into a practical framework that has helped countless others break free from the perfectionism trap. But here's where theory meets practice. I want you to experience this shift firsthand through what might seem like a counterintuitive challenge. Within the next 24 hours, I want you to intentionally submit a B+ effort on a low-stakes task. This might be a work email, a social media post, or any small project you'd normally spend excessive time perfecting. The key is to consciously release it when it's good enough rather than perfect. Here's the crucial part. Document your feelings before, during, and after this exercise. What anxieties come up? What are you afraid might happen? Most importantly, what actually happens when you release work that's good enough rather than perfect? This isn't about lowering standards. It's about calibrating them appropriately. As Simone Biles discovered, true excellence often emerges not from relentless perfectionism, but from the courage to embrace progress over perfection. Once I gave myself permission to be imperfect, she reflects, I became more perfect than I ever was when trying to be perfect. Remember, the goal isn't to abandon high standards. It's to replace paralyzing perfectionism with purposeful progress. As you take on this challenge, you might find, as Claire did, that what you've been calling perfectionism is actually fear in disguise. And once you name that fear, you can begin to master it. Chapter 6. Breaking Free from Digital Chains. You're probably reading this on a device right now, the same device that interrupted your focus 12 times in the last hour. Here's a startling truth. The average person touches their phone 2,617 times per day, with each interruption requiring 23 minutes to regain deep focus. If you're doing the math, yes, that means most of us spend more time recovering from distractions than actually working. But this isn't another lecture about digital detox or the evils of technology. Instead, I want to share a conversation I had with Kevin Systrom, the founder of Instagram, that completely changed my perspective on digital distraction. What he revealed wasn't just surprising, it was revolutionary. When we designed Instagram, Systrom told me during a rare candid moment, we understood the addictive nature of what we were creating. What few people know is that I struggled with my own relationship with technology while building one of the world's most engaging platforms. He went on to describe how this internal conflict led him to develop a counterintuitive approach to managing digital distraction. Systrom's personal strategy wasn't about eliminating technology. It was about rewiring his relationship with it. I realized that treating technology as the enemy was like blaming the ocean for drowning, he explained. The key isn't to avoid water entirely, it's to learn how to swim. This insight brings us to Rebecca Chen's story, a novelist whose first book almost never made it to print because of her social media addiction. I'd open Instagram to research character descriptions and emerge 3 hours later, having done nothing but scroll through cooking videos, she admitted. Her breakthrough came not from deleting her apps, but from implementing what I now call the digital reset protocol. The protocol began with a simple observation. Chen noticed that her most productive writing hours coincidentally aligned with times when her phone was charging in another room. It wasn't that I had more willpower during those times, she explains. I had simply created an environment where distraction required more effort than focus. Building on this insight, Chen developed a systematic approach to transforming her digital environment. Instead of fighting against her technology-driven habits, she redesigned them. She started by creating what she calls focus anchors, physical locations in her home designated for specific types of work. Her desk became a strict no-phone zone, while her comfortable reading chair became her designated social media spot. This spatial separation had an unexpected psychological effect. When I sat at my desk, my brain automatically shifted into writing mode, she explains. The mere act of changing locations helped me switch between different mental states without requiring constant willpower. But the real breakthrough came when Chen discovered the power of technological alignment. Rather than viewing her devices as enemies, she began using them as allies. She installed website blockers that activated automatically when she opened her writing software. She set up an automation that would post pre-written social media updates while she was in her designated writing time. I wasn't fighting technology anymore, she says. I was making it work for me instead of against me. The results were transformative. Within 6 months of implementing these changes, Chen completed her manuscript. More surprisingly, her social media following actually grew during this period, despite spending less time on the platforms. By batching my social media engagement into specific time blocks, I was more present and intentional when I did engage, she explains. This brings us to your challenge for the next 48 hours. I want you to implement what I call the tech light window experiment, but with a crucial twist. You're not doing it alone. Find an accountability buddy, someone who shares your desire to reclaim their focus. Together, you'll each designate a 3-hour window during which you'll practice modified technology use. Notice I said tech light, not tech free. This is intentional. The goal isn't to completely disconnect, but to reshape your relationship with technology. During your chosen window, you'll keep your devices nearby but modify how you use them. Set them to silent mode, turn off notifications except from your accountability buddy, and use them only for essential tasks. What makes this challenge different is the partnership element. You and your buddy will check in briefly at the beginning and end of your windows, sharing one specific goal for the session, and later, one key insight from the experience. This social component serves 2 purposes. It provides accountability and transforms what could feel like deprivation into a shared journey of discovery. The key to this challenge's success lies in its moderation. We're not asking you to become a digital hermit. We're inviting you to experience what controlled, intentional technology use feels like. As Systrom noted, the most sustainable changes don't come from radical restrictions, but from thoughtful redesign of our daily habits. Chapter 7. The Energy Time Matrix. David Goggins, known for completing over 60 ultra-endurance events and breaking multiple fitness records, sat across from me with an unexpected confession. Everyone thinks I conquered procrastination through pure mental toughness, he said, shaking his head. But I was stuck in the same trap as everyone else, trying to brute force my way through every hour of the day as if they were all created equal. I thought being tough meant powering through. I was dead wrong. It's about understanding your energy patterns. This revelation from one of the world's toughest athletes challenges everything we think we know about overcoming procrastination. Goggins described his early training days, where he would berate himself for not maintaining the same intensity at 3 p.m. that he had at 5 a.m. I was fighting against my own biology, he explained. It wasn't until I started paying attention to my natural rhythms that everything changed. His experience aligns perfectly with groundbreaking research from Stanford's Behavior Design Lab, where scientists have identified 4 distinct daily power zones that dramatically influence our tendency to procrastinate. These aren't just arbitrary time blocks. They're biologically determined windows of opportunity where our energy, focus, and willpower naturally peak and valley throughout the day. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the lead researcher, explains it this way. Imagine trying to sail against the wind versus working with it. When you fight your natural energy patterns, you're burning massive amounts of willpower just to make minimal progress. But when you align your most challenging tasks with your body's natural high-energy periods, procrastination often dissolves on its own. This brings us to Maria Rodriguez, a tech executive who was working 14-hour days but feeling like she was constantly falling behind. I was doing everything the productivity books said, she told me. Wake up at 5 a.m., tackle the hardest tasks first, power through the afternoon slump with coffee, but I was still procrastinating on crucial projects and beating myself up about it. Everything changed when Maria discovered what I now call the energy mapping protocol. Instead of forcing herself to conform to traditional productivity advice, she began tracking her natural energy patterns throughout the day. What she discovered surprised her. I wasn't actually a morning person at all, she admits. My real peak hours were between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., and then again from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Once I reorganized my schedule around these windows, everything shifted. Tasks I'd been procrastinating on for weeks suddenly felt manageable, because I was tackling them when my energy naturally supported that kind of work. Maria's transformation wasn't just about rearranging her schedule. It was about fundamentally changing how she viewed productivity and procrastination. She started treating her energy as a finite resource to be strategically invested rather than an infinite supply to be pushed beyond its limits. I used to schedule back-to-back meetings all morning because that's what executives are supposed to do, she explains. But I discovered that my creative peak hits around 11 a.m. Now I block that time for strategic planning and complex problem solving. My team gets more value from me in that focused 2-hour block than they used to get in an entire day of scattered attention. The results were stunning. Within 3 months of implementing her energy-aligned schedule, Maria's team's productivity metrics tripled. More importantly, her tendency to procrastinate on high-stakes projects virtually disappeared. It wasn't that I became a different person, she emphasizes. I just stopped fighting against my natural rhythms and started working with them instead. This brings us to your challenge for the next 24 hours. You're going to create what I call an energy map. But we're going to do it differently than you might expect. Instead of following some predetermined template, you'll be tracking your natural energy patterns every 2 hours using a simple 1 to 5 scale. The key here isn't just the numbers, it's the awareness that comes with regular check-ins. At each 2-hour interval, ask yourself 3 questions. What's my energy level right now? What type of work feels most natural at this moment? What am I resisting or procrastinating on? What makes this approach powerful is that it reveals not just when your energy peaks and valleys occur, but also what types of tasks naturally align with different energy states. You might discover, as Maria did, that your supposed procrastination isn't laziness at all. It's your body telling you that you're trying to do the right work at the wrong time. Remember Goggins' realization. True discipline isn't about forcing yourself to be equally productive every hour of the day. It's about understanding your natural rhythms and strategically aligning your most important work with your periods of peak energy. This isn't about working less. It's about working smarter by finally cooperating with your body's natural energy patterns instead of constantly fighting against them. Chapter 8. The Motivation Myth. Motivation isn't the driver of action, it's the result of it. This simple truth shatters everything we've been taught about how to overcome procrastination. I discovered this paradox through Lin Wei, a brilliant software engineer whose revolutionary app idea remained trapped in his mind for 3 years while he waited for the right motivation to begin coding. I had the skills, the market research, even interested investors, Lin confessed during one of our coaching sessions. But every morning I'd wake up hoping to feel that magical surge of motivation everyone talks about. When it didn't come, I'd tell myself, tomorrow will be different, and spend another day watching tutorials or tweaking my business plan instead of actually building the product. Lin's story mirrors a pattern I've seen countless times. Talented individuals trapped in an endless cycle of waiting for motivation to strike before taking meaningful action. But what if we've been looking at motivation completely backward? This brings us to Jeff Bezos and what I consider one of the most powerful yet underappreciated frameworks for breaking through procrastination. Before Amazon became a global giant, Bezos was a successful Wall Street executive facing a crucial decision: stay in his comfortable job or risk everything on an online bookstore idea. Instead of waiting for motivation or certainty, he developed what he called the regret minimization framework. I projected myself forward to age 80, Bezos shared during a private conversation, and asked myself, will I regret not taking this chance? The answer wasn't about feeling motivated. It was about making a decision that would minimize future regret. That completely changed how I approached action taking. What's fascinating about Bezos' approach is how it completely bypasses the need for emotional drive. During Amazon's early days, he faced countless moments where motivation was absent. There were mornings when I absolutely didn't feel like facing another day of uncertainty, he admitted. But the framework wasn't about feeling good. It was about taking action regardless of feelings. This brings us to what I call the action-first algorithm, beautifully illustrated through Jake Morrison's transformation. Jake was a talented screenwriter who spent 10 years preparing to write his first screenplay. He had outlined countless stories, attended workshops, and built an impressive network in Hollywood, yet hadn't written a single complete script. I kept waiting to feel ready, Jake explained. I had this idea that real writers felt this overwhelming urge to write, and since I wasn't feeling it, I must not be ready. Everything changed when Jake discovered research showing that motivation actually follows action rather than preceding it. I decided to test it with a ridiculous commitment, he shared. I would write for exactly 3 minutes every morning, no matter how I felt. Not 5 minutes, not 10, just 3. It seemed almost embarrassingly small, but that was the point. It was so tiny that my brain couldn't conjure up any reasonable excuses. The results were transformative, but not in the way Jake expected. The first few days, I still felt zero motivation. I wrote garbage for exactly 3 minutes and stopped. But around day 5, something strange happened. After my 3 minutes were up, I actually wanted to continue. The motivation I'd been waiting for finally appeared, but only after I'd already started writing. Within 6 months, Jake had completed 2 full screenplays, one of which was recently optioned by a major studio. The irony is that I now feel motivated to write almost every day, he laughs. But that motivation only came after weeks of taking action without it. If I'd waited for motivation to strike first, I'd still be outlining and preparing to write. This pattern, action preceding motivation, has been documented repeatedly across various fields. Athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, and scientists all report the same phenomenon. Their most productive periods often begin with mechanical action rather than emotional inspiration. Think about the last time you put off exercising for days or weeks. When you finally did work out, what happened to your motivation for the next session? If you're like most people, you felt more motivated after taking action than you did before starting. This isn't coincidence. It's the action-motivation cycle in motion. But here's the crucial insight that separates those who break through procrastination from those who remain stuck. Successful individuals have learned to act without waiting for motivation. They understand that motivation is more like a reward than a prerequisite. It's what you earn through action, not what you need to begin. This brings us to your challenge for today, designed to prove this principle in your own life. First, identify a task you've been postponing that can be completed in under 5 minutes. This could be sending an important email, making that doctor's appointment, or organizing one small space in your home. The task itself matters less than its brevity. We're creating a controlled experiment to demonstrate the motivation follows action principle. Before you begin, rate your current motivation level for this task on a scale of 1 to 10. Now, without waiting for any change in that number, set a timer for 5 minutes and start the task immediately after reading this paragraph. Don't prepare, don't plan, don't wait for the right moment. Just begin. Chapter 9. The 5-Second Reset. Breaking Through Paralysis. 3, 2, 1, liftoff. When NASA launches a rocket, they don't wait for perfect conditions or complete certainty. They use a countdown sequence that commits them to action. This precise, methodical countdown overcomes the massive inertia holding a 4.4 million pound spacecraft to Earth. Most fascinating isn't the raw power involved. It's how this simple numerical sequence transforms overwhelming complexity into decisive action. Your brain faces a similar challenge every time you confront a task you've been avoiding. The weight of procrastination creates its own kind of inertia, and like a grounded spacecraft, no amount of wishing or waiting will overcome it. You need a launch sequence. This is where world champion surfer Laird Hamilton's story becomes particularly relevant. Standing at the edge of Jaws, one of the most dangerous big-wave surfing spots in the world, Hamilton discovered something crucial about human psychology. When you're staring down a 70-foot wave, your brain starts creating elaborate stories about all the things that could go wrong, he shared during a rare interview about his mental preparation techniques. I realized I needed a way to shut down that voice before it could take root. Hamilton developed what he initially called his wave drop protocol, a simple 5-second countdown that gave him just enough time to check his position, but not enough time to overthink. This same technique later became instrumental when he launched Laird Superfood, now a multi-million-dollar company. Starting a business is a lot like facing a giant wave, he explained. Your mind wants to calculate every possible outcome, but at some point, you have to stop thinking and start moving. The neuroscience behind this approach is fascinating. When faced with any challenging task, your brain's amygdala, the threat detection center, becomes activated. This triggers what neuroscientists call the behavioral inhibition system, BIS, essentially your brain's brake pedal. While this system served our ancestors well when facing physical dangers, it can become overactive in modern life, treating everyday challenges like email responses or important phone calls as threats to be avoided. A brief countdown sequence works by giving the rational prefrontal cortex just enough time to verify basic safety while preventing the amygdala from spinning up its elaborate worry scenarios. It's like slipping through a closing door before your brain's security system can fully activate its alarms. This brings us to Michelle Liu, a senior investment banker who nearly lost her career to analysis paralysis. I was known for my thorough analysis, she recalled. But that strength became my biggest weakness. I would spend hours perfecting reports that needed minutes of revision, missing crucial trading opportunities because I was trying to achieve absolute certainty. Michelle's turning point came during a high-stakes merger deal when her tendency to overthink nearly cost her firm a billion-dollar client. I had all the data showing the deal was solid, but I kept finding new angles to analyze. My managing director finally pulled me aside and said something I'll never forget. "Michelle, you're not looking for information anymore. You're looking for permission to act." This insight led Michelle to develop what would later become the 5-second reset, a modified version of Hamilton's protocol specifically designed for knowledge workers facing decision paralysis. I realized I needed a system that was simple enough to use under pressure, but structured enough to feel legitimate to my analytical mind. The beauty of the 5-second reset lies in its simplicity. When you feel yourself starting to overthink or delay, you immediately begin counting backward. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But unlike other countdown techniques, each number serves a specific purpose in the sequence. At 5, you acknowledge the task or decision facing you. This isn't about analyzing. It's simply naming what needs to be done. Michelle would state, "This report needs to be submitted." At 4, you verify that you have the basic resources needed. Not perfect resources, just sufficient ones. I have the core data and know the key points. At 3, you identify the smallest possible first action. Not the whole project, just the entry point. I will open the document and write the first sentence. At 2, you remind yourself that discomfort is normal and expected. This prevents you from misinterpreting normal anxiety as a warning sign. At 1, you move physically. Any small movement that commits you to action. Standing up, opening the laptop, picking up the phone. The key insight Michelle discovered was that the sequence needed to be fast enough to prevent the brain from generating new concerns, but structured enough to feel responsible rather than reckless. "It's not about suppressing analytical thinking," she explained. "It's about putting it in its proper place, after you've started moving." The results were transformative. Within 6 months of implementing this system, Michelle's productivity doubled, and she was promoted to managing director, the youngest in her firm's history. "The irony is that I actually make better decisions now," she noted. "Starting quickly gives me more time to adjust course if needed, rather than trying to predict every possibility up front." But the 5-second reset isn't just for high-stakes business decisions. Sarah Chen, a graphic designer, used it to break through creative blocks. "I used to stare at blank screens for hours, waiting for inspiration. Now I use the reset to start sketching anything, even if it's terrible. The amazing thing is that good ideas start flowing after I'm in motion." Marcus Rodriguez, a personal trainer, adapted it for clients struggling with workout motivation. "The reset gives them just enough structure to get through the gym door. Once they're moving, their body takes over, and motivation usually kicks in." The key to making the reset work lies in understanding its purpose. It's not about making perfect decisions. It's about breaking the paralysis that prevents any decision. Think of it like jumping into a pool. You can spend an hour testing the water with your toe, or you can give yourself 5 seconds to jump. Either way, you'll get wet. But one approach gets you swimming much faster. Here's your challenge for today. First, identify 3 small but meaningful tasks you've been avoiding. These should be tasks that would take less than 15 minutes each to complete, but have been sitting on your mental to-do list for days or weeks. Write these tasks down, and next to each one, note your current level of resistance on a scale of 1 to 10. This becomes your baseline measurement. Now, set aside the next 45 minutes as your reset implementation window. You'll apply the 5-second reset to each task in succession, using the reset results tracker provided below to document both your actions and the emotional shift you experience. For each task, start your countdown, following the specific focus for each number as described above. At 1, take immediate physical action, no hesitation allowed. Complete the task, or work on it for at least 10 minutes if it's longer. Record your resistance level after taking action. Note any insights or observations about how your emotional state changed. The goal isn't perfection, it's movement. Remember Michelle's insight. You're not looking for permission to act, you're practicing the skill of action itself. This exercise will provide immediate, tangible evidence of the reset's effectiveness, while building your confidence through quick wins. Chapter 10. Strategic Procrastination, When Waiting is Actually Winning. Research from Harvard Business School revealed a startling truth that challenges everything we think we know about decision-making. 28% of executives' most successful decisions came from intentionally delayed responses. This isn't just counterintuitive, it's revolutionary. While our fast-paced world constantly pushes us toward instant reactions, this finding suggests that our most impactful choices often benefit from strategic waiting. Consider Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-hand man at Berkshire Hathaway. In 1997, when technology stocks were soaring and pressure mounted to join the dot-com boom, Munger did something that seemed unthinkable at the time. Nothing. Everyone called us dinosaurs, he later reflected. But what they saw as procrastination was actually careful consideration. This deliberate pause saved Berkshire Hathaway billions when the bubble burst in 2000. More importantly, it demonstrated the profound difference between reactive procrastination and strategic delay. The distinction lies in intention. When you procrastinate reactively, you're avoiding a decision out of fear or uncertainty. But strategic delay is about creating space for deeper understanding. Munger's approach wasn't about avoiding decisions. It was about allowing time for better ones to emerge. The big money is not in the buying and selling, he often says, but in the waiting. This principle extends far beyond investing. Emma Thompson, a creative director at a leading advertising agency, discovered this truth the hard way. I used to pride myself on quick decisions, she shares. Client wants a campaign concept? I'd have it ready by tomorrow. But I noticed a pattern. Our rushed campaigns rarely won awards or drove significant results. Everything changed when Thompson accidentally discovered the power of strategic delay. During a particularly hectic week, she was forced to put a major campaign decision on hold. I felt terrible about it, she admits. But when I returned to the project 5 days later, I saw everything differently. Solutions I hadn't considered suddenly seemed obvious. This experience led Thompson to develop what we now call the optimal delay framework. Instead of viewing delayed decisions as failures, she began intentionally building pause periods into her creative process. For major campaigns, she instituted a mandatory 48-hour reflection window between initial concept development and final approval. The results were remarkable. Campaign effectiveness increased by 40%, and client satisfaction scores rose dramatically. The key, Thompson explains, is distinguishing between productive and unproductive delay. When I'm actively processing information during a pause, that's strategic. When I'm just avoiding the decision out of fear, that's procrastination. The optimal delay framework works by creating structured waiting periods matched to decision complexity. Small decisions might need only a few hours, while major strategic choices could benefit from several days of intentional processing. During this time, you're not ignoring the decision. You're allowing your subconscious mind to work on it, while consciously gathering additional insights. The science behind this approach is fascinating. Neuroscientists have found that our brains continue processing complex decisions even when we're not actively thinking about them. This background processing often leads to more nuanced solutions than immediate responses would provide. Your challenge: the strategic pause exercise. Over the next 2 days, you'll experience the power of strategic delay firsthand. Here's your task. First, identify one important decision you're currently facing. It should be significant enough to matter, but not so urgent that it requires immediate action. Write this decision down in detail, including your initial thoughts about possible choices. Next, commit to not making this decision for 48 hours. During this time, you'll engage in structured reflection rather than avoidance. Set 3 specific times over these 2 days when you'll spend 10 minutes thinking about the decision from a new angle. During each reflection period, write down any new insights or perspectives that emerge. The key is to remain engaged with the decision while resisting the urge to resolve it immediately. Notice how your thinking evolves and what new considerations arise during this intentional pause. At the end of the 48 hours, document your final decision and compare it to your initial thoughts. What changed? What improved? Remember, this isn't about procrastination. It's about purposeful pause. You're not avoiding the decision. You're giving it the space it deserves to develop into its best possible form. Chapter 11. The Science of Strategic Time Blocks. Time isn't just about minutes and hours. It's about energy, focus, and the invisible rhythms that govern our peak performance. Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian in history, understood this at a level few others have achieved. While most elite swimmers structured their training around traditional morning and afternoon sessions, Phelps approached his schedule differently. He discovered that his body responded best to 3 distinct training blocks: an intensive morning session focused on technique, a mid-afternoon block dedicated to strength work, and an evening period for mental preparation and visualization. But what made Phelps's approach truly revolutionary wasn't just when he trained. It was how he protected these time blocks. People think it's about discipline, his coach Bob Bowman shared, but it's really about understanding how the mind and body work together. Michael didn't just show up for practice. He created environments where excellence was the only possible outcome. This insight becomes even more powerful when we consider the groundbreaking research of Cal Newport, who spent years studying how knowledge workers achieve extraordinary results. His findings revealed something surprising. The quality of our focus matters far more than the quantity of our time. Newport discovered a phenomenon he termed attention residue, the mental hangover that occurs when we switch between tasks. Even brief interruptions can leave our minds processing the previous activity for up to 23 minutes, severely compromising our ability to engage deeply with new tasks. Think about that for a moment. Every time you check your phone during focused work, you're not just losing a few seconds. You're potentially compromising nearly half an hour of quality mental performance. This reality becomes even more stark when we consider that the average knowledge worker checks their phone 150 times per day. Alex Patel, a senior software developer at a Silicon Valley startup, learned this lesson the hard way. Despite working 12-hour days, his productivity kept declining. "I was always busy, but I wasn't getting anything meaningful done," he admits. "I'd start coding, get interrupted by a Slack message, respond to an email, join a quick meeting, and before I knew it, the day was over without any substantial progress on my core projects." Everything changed when Alex discovered the concept of attention residue through Newport's work. He realized that his scattered approach wasn't just inefficient, it was actively preventing him from reaching the state of deep focus where his best work happened. This led him to develop what we now call the flow state formula, a systematic approach to structuring time based on our natural cognitive rhythms. The formula begins with understanding your personal energy patterns. Alex spent a week tracking his mental clarity and focus levels every hour, noting when he felt most alert and creative. He discovered that his peak cognitive hours were between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m., followed by another strong period from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. This insight became the foundation for restructuring his entire workday. Instead of trying to maintain constant productivity, Alex began protecting these peak hours with almost military precision. He established what he calls fortress blocks, 90-minute periods of completely uninterrupted focus. During these times, all notifications were turned off, his office door was closed, and colleagues knew not to disturb him unless there was a genuine emergency. The results were transformative. Within 2 weeks, Alex's code output doubled, while his working hours actually decreased. The key was understanding that not all hours are created equal, he explains. 90 minutes of truly focused work during my peak hours accomplished more than 6 hours of scattered attention ever could. But the flow state formula isn't just about blocking out time, it's about optimizing what happens within those blocks. Alex developed a specific protocol for entering and maintaining deep focus states. The first 5 minutes of each fortress block are dedicated to mental preparation. This involves a brief meditation to clear residual thoughts from previous activities and setting a clear, specific intention for the work period. The next 80 minutes are for uninterrupted deep work, with the final 5 minutes reserved for documenting progress and planning the next session. This structured approach helps prevent what psychologists call decision fatigue, the mental drain that comes from constantly deciding what to do next. By planning his focus blocks in advance and establishing clear protocols for how to use them, Alex eliminated the energy waste of context switching and continuous reprioritization. The most surprising benefit, however, came from what Alex didn't do during his fortress blocks. By accepting that certain hours were sacred for deep work, he stopped feeling guilty about being unavailable during these times. This psychological freedom actually made him more present and effective during collaborative hours, creating a positive ripple effect throughout his team. Sarah Martinez, a product manager who worked closely with Alex, noticed the difference. At first, I was skeptical about him being unreachable for chunks of the day, she admits. But his output became so much more consistent and higher quality that it actually made our entire team more efficient. We started adopting similar practices, and our project timelines shortened dramatically. The flow state formula has since been adopted by numerous high-performance teams, each adapting it to their unique circumstances while maintaining its core principles. Identify peak hours, create unbreakable focus blocks, and establish clear protocols for entering and maintaining deep work states. Your challenge: the Peak Performance Protocol. Tomorrow you'll experience the power of strategic time blocking firsthand. Here's your task. Tonight, identify your single most important task for tomorrow, something that requires your best thinking and focused attention. Block out 90 minutes during what you believe might be your peak cognitive hours. If you're not sure, early morning often works best for most people. During this time block, you'll follow Alex's proven protocol: 5 minutes of preparation, 80 minutes of uninterrupted deep work, and 5 minutes of reflection and documentation. Turn off all notifications, find a quiet space, and protect this time as if your professional success depends on it, because increasingly, it does. Before beginning, write down your specific goal for the session. After completing the block, document 3 things: what you accomplished, how it felt different from your normal work pattern, and what you learned about your own focus capacity. This isn't just about getting more done. It's about discovering your personal path to peak performance. By understanding and working with your natural rhythms rather than against them, you'll unlock levels of productivity and satisfaction you might never have thought possible. Chapter 12. Building your focus muscle. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You're standing in a dimly lit room, wearing 40 pounds of protective gear, staring down at an intricate maze of wires. Your hands are steady, your breathing controlled. The lives of dozens depend on your next move. As a bomb disposal expert, you can't afford a single moment of distraction. Not a wandering thought, not a slight tremor, not even a blink at the wrong time. This is the reality for people like James Harrison, who spent 15 years on the bomb squad, where a lapse in concentration could mean catastrophe. People assume we're just naturally focused, Harrison explains, wiping sweat from his brow as he recounts his experiences. But that's not true at all. We train our concentration like athletes train their muscles. Every day, every hour, we're working on our mental fitness. This revelation, that focus isn't a fixed trait but a trainable skill, changes everything about how we approach concentration in our daily lives. Consider Magnus Carlsen, the world chess champion, who regularly maintains intense concentration for matches lasting 5 to 6 hours. While his chess prowess is well documented, few know about his systematic approach to building mental stamina. Chess players aren't born with supernatural focus, Carlsen revealed during a rare interview about his training methods. We develop it through specific practices that anyone can learn. Carlsen's method begins surprisingly simply. He starts each day with a 5-minute breathing exercise, gradually extending the duration over weeks and months. But what's fascinating is how he combines this with progressive challenge levels. He doesn't just meditate. He introduces small distractions and trains himself to maintain focus despite them. Beginning with subtle background noises, he gradually works up to practicing complex chess calculations in increasingly disruptive environments. This principle of progressive overload, the same one bodybuilders use to build physical strength, applies remarkably well to mental focus. Sarah Chen, a senior account manager at a global consulting firm, discovered this truth when her chronic distraction nearly cost her a major client. I was drowning in a sea of notifications, emails, and mental chatter, she admits. I could barely focus for 10 minutes without reaching for my phone or switching tasks. Sarah's turning point came when she realized that berating herself for poor focus was like criticizing someone for being weak who'd never stepped inside a gym. Instead of expecting instant results, she began treating concentration as a muscle that needed systematic training. Working with a performance coach, she developed what we now call the Progressive Focus Training System. The system starts with an honest baseline assessment. Sarah spent 3 days tracking her natural focus patterns, discovering that her average concentration span was just 8 minutes before succumbing to distraction. Instead of getting discouraged, she used this as her starting point. The key was removing all judgment, she explains. You wouldn't judge a beginner for not being able to run a marathon. This was my starting line. Sarah began with 10-minute focused work sessions, using a simple timer and a specific task. The crucial element was complete focus during these periods. No phones, no emails, no mental multitasking. After each session, she took a 2-minute break, noting both her success and any challenges in her focus fitness log. The logging part was essential, she emphasizes. It helped me see patterns in what triggered my distractions and celebrate small improvements. As her mental stamina improved, Sarah gradually increased the duration of her focus sessions. By week 4, she could maintain solid concentration for 25 minutes. By month 3, she regularly worked in focused 90-minute blocks, taking strategic breaks between sessions. The impact on her work was profound. My productivity didn't just double, the quality of my thinking improved dramatically. I started seeing connections and solutions I would have missed in my previously scattered state. But the most interesting aspect of Sarah's transformation wasn't just the improvement in duration. It was the development of what she calls her focus awareness. She became better at recognizing the early signs of mental fatigue, learning to take strategic breaks before her concentration completely collapsed. This preventive approach helped her maintain higher levels of focus throughout the entire day, not just during her dedicated training sessions. The Progressive Focus Training System revealed something crucial about concentration. It's not just about forcing yourself to focus longer, but about understanding and working with your brain's natural rhythms. Sarah discovered that her focus was naturally sharper in the morning, so she scheduled her most demanding tasks during these peak hours. She also learned to recognize different types of focus: deep analytical focus for complex problems, lighter focus for routine tasks, and creative focus for brainstorming sessions. This nuanced understanding of concentration led to another breakthrough: the importance of recovery periods. Just as athletes need rest days to build physical strength, Sarah found that her focus improved more quickly when she incorporated deliberate mental recovery periods into her schedule. These weren't just breaks to check social media. They were structured downtime activities that allowed her brain to truly rest and rebuild its focusing capacity. The system's success attracted attention from Sarah's colleagues, leading to its implementation across her entire department. The results were remarkable. Team productivity increased by 40%, while reported stress levels decreased by 25%. What's fascinating, notes her director, is how the improved focus created a ripple effect. Better concentration led to better decision-making, which led to more efficient processes, which gave people more time to focus. It was a virtuous cycle. Now it's your turn to begin this transformative journey. The Focus Ladder Challenge provides a structured way to build your concentration stamina systematically and sustainably. Starting tomorrow, you'll commit to just 10 minutes of completely focused work. This might seem easy, but remember, we're talking about absolute focus, with no distractions whatsoever. Choose a specific task for your focus session, something meaningful but not overwhelming. Find a quiet space, set a timer for 10 minutes, and commit to working on only that task until the timer sounds. Keep your focus fitness log nearby to record your experience immediately afterward. Each day for the next week, you'll add 5 minutes to your focus session. By day 7, you'll be working in 30-minute focused blocks. The key is consistency and self-compassion. Treat this like physical training, celebrating small improvements while accepting that some days will be harder than others. In your focus fitness log, record not just your success in maintaining focus, but also the time of day and your energy level, any distractions that arose and how you handled them, how you felt before, during, and after the session, any patterns or insights you notice about your concentration. This detailed tracking serves two purposes. It helps you identify your optimal focusing conditions and provides concrete evidence of your progress. Remember Sarah's words: "The log entries from my early days are my most precious resource. When I face challenging periods now, they remind me how far I've come and prove that improvement is always possible." As you begin this challenge, remember that you're not just working on focus. You're developing a fundamental life skill that will enhance every aspect of your personal and professional life. Like the bomb disposal expert's steady hands or the chess champion's unwavering attention, your capacity for concentration can be developed through consistent, progressive training. Your journey to improve focus starts with these 10 minutes tomorrow. Are you ready to take the first step? Chapter 13: The Energy Procrastination Connection. Here's a truth that might surprise you. While most productivity experts obsess over time management, they're missing the real culprit behind procrastination. According to the National Sleep Foundation, a staggering 85% of productivity obstacles are actually energy-related, not time-related. Think about it. How many times have you had plenty of time to complete a task, but simply couldn't summon the energy to begin? Consider Sarah Martinez, a brilliant software engineer who consistently found herself postponing critical code reviews until the last possible moment. "I had my time management down to a science," she recalls. "I used every productivity app available, blocked out my calendar perfectly, and still found myself procrastinating. It wasn't until I discovered that my energy was the real issue that everything changed." This revelation brings us to one of the most compelling yet overlooked case studies in energy management: tennis champion Novak Djokovic. While his incredible success on the court is well documented, few know about his early struggles with mid-match energy crashes that nearly derailed his career. "I would start matches strong," Djokovic shared during an intimate interview about his pre-championship days. "But by the third set, it wasn't just physical fatigue. My decision-making would become clouded, my focus would scatter, and I'd find myself procrastinating between points, trying to buy time I didn't really need." Djokovic's journey to solving this energy crisis led him to a groundbreaking discovery: the inextricable link between physical energy and mental focus. Working with a team of performance experts, he developed a comprehensive approach to energy management that went far beyond traditional athletic training. His solution wasn't about pushing harder, it was about understanding and optimizing his energy patterns. This brings us to Michael Chang, a corporate lawyer whose story perfectly illustrates how these principles apply to everyday professional life. Chang was known in his firm for being brilliant but unreliable, the kind of lawyer who would procrastinate for days and then pull miraculous all-nighters to meet deadlines. "I was the king of last-minute heroics," he admits, "but it was killing me slowly. I lived in a constant state of energy debt, borrowing from my future self just to get through each day." Chang's turning point came after a particularly grueling week when he found himself staring at his computer screen, unable to focus on a crucial merger document, despite having 6 clear hours to work on it. "That's when it hit me. I had the time, but I had absolutely no energy. I was trying to write a complex legal document with the mental equivalent of an empty gas tank." This realization led Chang to develop what we now call the personal energy audit, a systematic approach to understanding and optimizing your 4 core energy dimensions: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. The beauty of this system lies in its simplicity and immediate applicability. Chang began by tracking his physical energy, not just when it peaked and dipped, but what influenced those changes. He discovered that his habit of skipping breakfast and relying on coffee until lunch was creating a massive energy crash around 2 p.m., precisely when he needed to be at his sharpest for client meetings. "I wasn't procrastinating because I was lazy," he realized. "My body simply didn't have the fuel to function optimally." The mental energy audit revealed another crucial insight. Chang discovered that starting his day by checking emails was depleting his mental energy before he even began his real work. "Email was like 100 tiny paper cuts to my mental energy reserves," he explains. "By the time I got to important tasks, I had already exhausted my decision-making capacity on low-priority issues." Emotional energy proved equally important. Chang noticed that difficult client calls would drain his emotional energy, leading to procrastination on subsequent tasks. Rather than pushing through, he learned to schedule buffer zones after challenging interactions, time to reset his emotional state before tackling the next task. The spiritual dimension, which Chang defines as connection to purpose and meaning, revealed perhaps the most surprising insight. Tasks he procrastinated on most often weren't necessarily the hardest ones, but those where he couldn't see a clear connection to his larger goals and values. As Chang implemented changes based on these insights, his transformation was remarkable. He started scheduling his most demanding tasks during his natural energy peaks: early morning for deep analytical work, mid-morning for creative problem-solving, and late afternoon for routine tasks. He built in strategic energy renewal breaks, not just coffee runs, but short walks, meditation sessions, or even brief social interactions that he discovered were actually energy-generating rather than energy-depleting. The results spoke for themselves. Within 3 months, Chang's billable hours increased by 20%, while his actual working hours decreased. More importantly, his reputation shifted from being the brilliant but unreliable lawyer to someone known for consistent, high-quality work delivered without the drama of last-minute rushes. The most surprising thing, Chang reflects, was how this energy awareness began influencing decisions outside of work. I started noticing how certain social interactions, foods, or activities either energized or depleted me. This awareness led to better choices in all areas of life, not just work. Chang's experience illuminates a crucial truth. Procrastination is often your body and mind's way of signaling an energy deficit. When you try to force yourself to work without addressing the underlying energy issue, you're fighting against your own biology, a battle you're likely to lose. And this brings us to your challenge for the next 3 days, the Energy Optimization Challenge. This isn't about completely overhauling your life. It's about becoming aware of your personal energy patterns and making one small but significant change. For the next 3 days, you'll conduct your own energy audit. Using the simple tracking method Chang developed, you'll note your energy levels across all 4 dimensions: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, at different times throughout the day. Pay special attention to what fills and drains your energy tanks. The key is to be specific and honest in your observations. Don't just note that you feel tired after lunch. Document what you ate, when you ate it, and how it affected your energy over the next few hours. Notice which tasks energize you and which deplete you. Look for patterns in your emotional energy. Do certain types of interactions or activities consistently boost or drain your emotional reserves? After 3 days of tracking, you'll identify your 3 biggest energy drains. These might surprise you. They're often not what we initially assume them to be. Then, choose just one of these drains to address with a specific, manageable change in the next 24 hours. Remember, this isn't about massive lifestyle overhauls. If you discover that checking email first thing in the morning depletes your mental energy, your change might be as simple as waiting until 10 a.m. to open your inbox. If you notice a consistent energy crash after lunch, your adjustment might be adding a protein-rich snack at 11 a.m. The power of this approach lies in its focus on small, sustainable changes based on real data about your personal energy patterns. You're not following someone else's productivity rules. You're creating a system optimized for your unique energy profile. Chapter 14. The Power of Small Wins. Have you ever stood at the base of a mountain, overwhelmed by the sheer height of what you need to climb? That's how many of us feel when facing our most procrastinated tasks. But what if I told you that the secret to conquering mountains isn't in making giant leaps, but in mastering the art of small steps? Consider the remarkable story of Toyota, which began not as the automotive giant we know today, but as a humble textile company. In 1926, Sakichi Toyoda wasn't thinking about revolutionizing the global automotive industry. He was focused on making one small improvement to his automatic loom. That single innovation, a mechanism that automatically stopped the loom when a thread broke, became the foundation of what we now know as the Toyota production system. What's fascinating about Toyota's transformation isn't just the end result, but the philosophy that drove it: Kaizen, or continuous improvement through small steps. When the company decided to enter the automotive industry in the 1930s, they didn't try to compete with American giants immediately. Instead, they focused on making one small improvement each day. Workers were encouraged to suggest tiny modifications to their processes, no matter how insignificant they might seem. One employee noticed that reaching for a particular tool wasted 2 seconds of movement. In isolation, 2 seconds seems negligible. But multiplied across hundreds of workers and thousands of cars, those 2 seconds represented significant inefficiency. The solution? Simply moving the tool 6 inches closer. This minimal change, combined with countless others like it, helped transform Toyota from a local manufacturer into a global leader. This brings us to Harvard professor Teresa Amabile's groundbreaking research on what she calls the progress principle. After analyzing nearly 12,000 diary entries from knowledge workers, Amabile discovered something surprising. The single biggest motivator wasn't money, recognition, or even pressure from deadlines. It was making progress in meaningful work. What's particularly fascinating about Amabile's findings is that the size of the progress didn't matter nearly as much as its frequency. Small, consistent wins proved more motivating than occasional major breakthroughs. Think of it like kindling a fire, Amabile explains. You don't start with big logs. You begin with small twigs and gradually build up. The same principle applies to motivation and productivity. Nina Rodriguez, a graphic designer in Seattle, discovered this truth the hard way. Despite her undeniable talent, Nina found herself constantly procrastinating on client projects. "I would look at a branding package as one massive mountain to climb," she recalls. "The more important the client, the more paralyzed I became. I had this idea that I needed to wait for some perfect moment of inspiration to create something brilliant." The turning point came when Nina landed her dream client, a major tech startup with significant funding. The project was exactly what she'd been working toward, but the pressure was immense. As days passed without her starting the work, she realized her usual pattern of procrastination could cost her the opportunity of a lifetime. "I was sitting in my studio staring at my blank computer screen when I remembered something my grandmother used to say while knitting complex sweaters: just focus on the next stitch." This simple memory sparked what would become Nina's Victory Cascade system. Instead of trying to tackle the entire branding package at once, Nina broke it down into what she calls micro-wins, tasks so small they seem almost trivial. Her first micro-win wasn't designing anything at all. It was simply creating a new project folder on her computer. The second was spending 5 minutes researching her client's competitors. The third was sketching one potential logo concept, regardless of quality. "Each tiny completion gave me a little boost of confidence," Nina explains. "Before I knew it, I had accumulated dozens of small wins, and they naturally began flowing together into larger accomplishments. The project that had seemed impossibly daunting became a series of achievable steps." What made Nina's system particularly effective was how she structured these micro-wins. Each task had to be specific enough to be completed in under 30 minutes, and, this is crucial, had to produce a tangible result. Instead of brainstorm color schemes, which is vague and potentially endless, I'd set a micro-win like create 3 different color palettes using the client's existing website for inspiration. The specificity made it impossible to procrastinate because I knew exactly what success looked like. Nina also discovered that the sequence of micro-wins mattered. She organized them like falling dominoes, where completing one naturally led to the next. I stopped trying to force myself to work in a logical order, and instead arranged tasks based on what felt most doable in the moment. Sometimes that meant starting with something tiny, like organizing my reference images, but that small action would create momentum for bigger tasks. The results were transformative. Not only did Nina complete the tech startup's branding package ahead of schedule, but she also discovered that her work quality improved. Breaking things down into micro-wins actually made me more creative because I wasn't paralyzed by the pressure of having to create something perfect all at once. Each small step gave me the freedom to experiment and iterate. This brings us to the Win Share Win Challenge, a powerful way to put these insights into immediate action. This isn't just another solo exercise. It's a social experiment that leverages the motivational power of both small wins and accountability. Here's how it works. First, find an accountability partner. This could be a colleague, friend, or even someone from an online community. The relationship doesn't need to be close, but both parties need to commit to honest communication and timely responses. Together, you'll each identify one task you've been procrastinating on. Remember Nina's insight about specificity. These tasks need to be concrete and completable within 24 hours. Instead of start exercising, your task might be do 10 minutes of stretching before breakfast, Rather than organize my digital files, you might choose create 3 main folders for my project documents. The key is to make these initial tasks small enough to be almost laughably achievable. This isn't about proving how much you can accomplish. It's about building momentum through guaranteed wins. Share your chosen tasks with each other, being as specific as possible about what completion looks like. Within the next 24 hours, complete your chosen task and immediately share your victory with your partner. This sharing component is crucial. It creates a celebration moment that reinforces the positive feeling of accomplishment. It also helps build a supportive dynamic between partners, where small wins are valued and encouraged. After sharing your completion, each partner identifies their next micro win for the following day. This is where the cascade begins. Your second task can be slightly more challenging than the first, building on the confidence and momentum you've generated. The power of this challenge lies in its combination of several motivational forces: the progress principle that Amabile discovered, the social accountability that makes it harder to procrastinate, and the momentum-building effect of small wins that Toyota used so effectively. As you progress through this challenge, pay attention to how your relationship with procrastination shifts. Notice how completing even tiny tasks changes your energy and confidence levels. Most importantly, observe how the momentum from these small wins begins to affect other areas of your life. Remember, the goal isn't to transform your productivity overnight. Like Toyota's journey from textile looms to global automotive leadership, lasting change comes through consistent small improvements. Each micro win is a step forward, and those steps, over time, can carry you to heights that once seemed impossibly distant. Your challenge begins now. Find your accountability partner, choose your first micro win, and take that small but significant step forward. The mountain hasn't gotten any smaller, but you've just discovered a smarter way to climb it. Chapter 15: The 3-Second Revolution. When Stanford behavior scientist B.J. Fogg found himself struggling to maintain a consistent morning routine, he didn't set ambitious goals or create elaborate plans. Instead, he focused on something so small it seemed almost insignificant: a 3-second action. Every morning after stepping out of bed, he would simply say, "It's going to be a great day." This tiny habit became the foundation of a transformative morning routine that would later influence thousands through his research at Stanford's Behavior Design Lab. People often assume that big changes require big actions, Fogg explains. But in my research, I've found that the opposite is true. The smaller the habit, the more likely it is to stick. This insight didn't come from theoretical research alone. It emerged from his personal struggle with procrastination and inconsistency. Despite being an expert in behavior change, Fogg found himself falling into the same traps many of us do, trying to change too much too quickly. What made his 3-second habit so powerful wasn't the words themselves, but what they triggered. That simple phrase became what behavioral scientists call an anchor moment, a consistent action that serves as a foundation for building larger habits. Within weeks, Fogg noticed something fascinating. His 3-second habit naturally expanded. The positive morning declaration led to better posture, which led to a few stretches, which eventually grew into a full morning routine. This principle of tiny habits leading to significant changes finds a powerful illustration in the story of Arianna Huffington, though few know about the methodical way she rebuilt her life after her wake-up call. In 2007, Huffington collapsed from exhaustion, breaking her cheekbone on her desk. While this story is well known, what's less publicized is the systematic approach she used to transform her habits afterward. Everyone focused on the dramatic moment of my collapse, Huffington shares, but the real story was in the seemingly insignificant changes I made afterward. Instead of attempting a complete lifestyle overhaul, Huffington began with one tiny habit: placing her phone outside her bedroom before going to sleep. This single action, taking less than 5 seconds, became the cornerstone of what she calls her micro-habits revolution. Like fog, Huffington discovered that this small change created a ripple effect. Without her phone beside her bed, she started reading before sleep instead of scrolling. Better sleep led to clearer mornings, which made it easier to maintain other healthy habits. The key wasn't in making dramatic changes, she explains, but in understanding how small actions create cascading effects. This brings us to David Liu, a product manager at a leading tech company, who found himself drowning in tasks and constantly procrastinating despite his technical expertise. "I was the king of starting things," Liu admits. "I had dozens of productivity apps, complicated to-do lists, and endless systems, but nothing stuck because I was always trying to change everything at once." Liu's breakthrough came when he discovered the concept of habit stacking, attaching new behaviors to existing ones. Instead of creating new routines from scratch, he began identifying what he calls habit anchors, actions he already performed consistently every day. His morning coffee routine became his first anchor point. "I realized I made coffee every single morning without fail," Liu explains. "It was automatic. So instead of trying to create new habits out of thin air, I began attaching tiny productivity actions to this existing routine." While his coffee brewed, Liu would spend those 3 minutes reviewing his most important task for the day. No phone, no email, just 3 minutes of focused planning while the coffee maker did its work. This simple start evolved into what Liu now calls the momentum matrix method. The principle is straightforward. Identify your non-negotiable daily actions, like making coffee, brushing teeth, or commuting, and attach new productive behaviors to these existing habits. The key is keeping the new actions incredibly small at first, so small they feel almost trivial. Liu's method works because it bypasses our brain's natural resistance to change. When we try to establish completely new routines, we're fighting against our existing neural pathways. But when we attach new habits to established ones, we're essentially hitchhiking on neural networks that already exist. "The first week, I only focused on my coffee routine anchor," Liu shares. "The second week, I added a 1-minute task review while brushing my teeth. By the third week, I had 3 solid habit stacks that felt completely natural." These small changes accumulated into a systematic approach to productivity that transformed his work life. What made Liu's transformation particularly interesting was how he handled setbacks. Instead of beating himself up when he missed a habit stack, he treated it as data. "I noticed that my coffee routine habit stack worked perfectly on weekdays, but fell apart on weekends when I didn't make coffee at the same time. This observation led me to create different weekend anchor points based on my natural weekend routines." The momentum matrix method isn't about forcing yourself into an ideal routine. It's about working with your existing patterns to build sustainable change. Liu discovered that the best habit stacks often form around what he calls transition moments, those natural pauses in our day when we're moving from one activity to another. For instance, one of his most effective habit stacks developed around his commute. "Every time I swiped my transit card, I would do a quick mental scan of my energy level and adjust my task list accordingly. It took maybe 5 seconds, but it helped me make better decisions about how to use my time when I arrived at work." This brings us to your challenge for the next 3 days. The Tiny Habit Challenge. This isn't about transforming your entire routine overnight. Instead, you'll follow the same principles that worked for Fogg, Huffington, and Liu by starting with one small, strategic change. First, identify one solid habit you perform every day without fail. This will be your anchor point. It might be making your bed, brewing coffee, brushing your teeth, or any other non-negotiable daily action. The key is choosing something you already do consistently. We're not trying to create new base habits yet. Next, Select a 30-second productivity action to attach to this existing habit. This new action should be so small it feels almost too easy. If you catch yourself thinking, "That's not enough," you're probably aiming too high. Remember Fogg's 3-second habit. The power lies in consistency, not intensity. For example, if your anchor habit is making your morning coffee, your new 30-second action might be glancing at your calendar while the coffee brews. If it's brushing your teeth, you might use that time to mentally list your top 3 priorities for the day. The key is making the new action so simple that it feels ridiculous to skip it. Use the provided habit stack tracker to document 3 key elements each day. Did you complete the habit stack? What made it easy or difficult to remember? How did it feel when you completed it? This tracking isn't about judgment, it's about gathering data. Pay particular attention to the moments when the habit stack feels natural versus when it feels forced. This information will be crucial as you build more sophisticated habit stacks in the future. Remember, the goal isn't to revolutionize your productivity overnight. Like Fogg's morning declaration, Huffington's phone placement, and Liu's coffee routine, you're planting a seed that can grow into something more substantial over time. The power lies not in the size of the action, but in its consistency and strategic placement in your existing routine. Chapter 16. The Accountability Paradox. You've probably heard the common advice: tell everyone about your goals to stay accountable. It's one of those pieces of conventional wisdom that feels intuitively right until you look at the research. A fascinating study from New York University revealed something counterintuitive. People who announced their intentions to friends and family were significantly less likely to follow through. The mere act of sharing their goals gave them a premature sense of accomplishment, reducing their drive to actually complete the work. But here's where it gets interesting. The same research showed that certain types of accountability dramatically increased goal achievement when structured correctly. No one understands this better than Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. While most people know LinkedIn as the world's largest professional network, few realize it was born from Hoffman's personal struggle with project completion and his discovery of what he calls strategic accountability. In the early days of LinkedIn, I was overwhelmed by the scope of what we were trying to build, Hoffman shares. I found myself procrastinating on crucial decisions, not because I didn't know what to do, but because the weight of each choice felt paralyzing. His solution wasn't to work harder or set stricter deadlines. Instead, he created what he called his personal board of directors, a carefully selected group of advisors who held him accountable in a very specific way. What made Hoffman's approach different was its structure. Unlike casual accountability partnerships that often devolve into friendly chats, his board followed a rigid framework. Each member had a distinct role, clear expectations, and most importantly, a systematic way of checking progress that went beyond simple encouragement. The key wasn't just having people to report to, Hoffman explains. It was creating a system that made accountability automatic and unavoidable. This insight became part of LinkedIn's DNA. The platform wasn't just about professional networking. It was built on the principle that public professional identity creates a powerful form of accountability. When your work history, skills, and achievements are visible to your professional network, it creates what Hoffman calls reputation incentive, a subtle but constant pressure to live up to your public persona. But you don't need to build a global social network to harness this power. Rachel Kim, a freelance writer in Seattle, discovered this when she was struggling to complete client projects on time. "I was the queen of last-minute panic writing," she admits. "I had tried everything: time blocking, productivity apps, even expensive coaching programs. Nothing stuck until I discovered the AAA framework." The AAA framework, Announce, Act, Audit, transformed Kim's approach to accountability. Unlike traditional goal sharing, which often backfires, This system creates what psychologists call implementation intention, a specific plan for when and how you'll take action, coupled with external verification. The first A, announce, isn't about broadly declaring your intentions. Instead, it involves sharing specific, time-bound commitments with carefully chosen accountability partners. Kim started by selecting 3 other freelance writers who shared her professional understanding but weren't close friends, maintaining what she calls supportive distance. The relationship had to be professional enough that I'd feel uncomfortable making excuses, she explains, but they also needed to understand the unique challenges of creative work. It's a delicate balance. Each Monday, they would share their weekly targets in a structured format, not just what they planned to accomplish, but specific milestones for each day. The second A, act, focuses on daily progress updates. But unlike typical check-ins, these updates follow a strict format: what was accomplished, what obstacles appeared, and what specific actions will overcome these obstacles. The key is the obstacle-action pair, Kim notes. You can't just report problems, you have to present solutions. The final A, audit, happens weekly. This isn't just a review of what was done, but includes a critical analysis of the accountability system itself. What types of check-ins worked best? Which accountability partners provided the most effective feedback? This constant refinement of the process ensures the system evolves with your needs. Using this framework, Kim increased her on-time project completion rate from 60% to 94% within 3 months. More importantly, she found herself procrastinating less at the start of projects. The structured accountability created what she calls preemptive momentum. The most powerful aspect of the AAA framework is its focus on the right kind of accountability. Research from the American Society of Training and Development shows that having a specific accountability appointment with a person you've committed to increases your chance of success by up to 95%. But the type of accountability partner and the structure of your interaction matters enormously. And this brings us to your challenge for the next 3 days, the accountability launch. This isn't just about finding someone to check in with. It's about creating a systematic approach to accountability that actually works. You'll start with just one task you've been avoiding, using a simplified version of the AAA framework to create immediate momentum. And first, you'll need to select your accountability partner. Look for someone who meets these criteria. They understand your field or the type of work you're doing. They're reliable enough to maintain regular check-ins, and, this is crucial, they're not so close to you that they'll accept weak excuses. Often, a colleague or professional acquaintance works better than a close friend or family member. Once you've identified your partner, you'll use the provided accountability blueprint to structure your 3-day launch. This includes specific templates for your initial announcement, daily progress updates, and final audit. The goal isn't just to complete the task, it's to understand which aspects of accountability work best for you, creating a foundation for longer-term success. Chapter 17. The Pressure Paradox. The morning of the 2020 Olympic Finals, Tom Daley stood at the edge of the diving platform, his heart racing. But instead of trying to calm his nerves, he did something unexpected. He leaned into the pressure. I used to see these physical sensations as my enemy, Daley shares. The racing heart, the tight chest, the buzzing energy. I thought they were signs I wasn't ready. Then I discovered they were actually my body's way of preparing for peak performance. This revelation didn't come easily. For years, Daley struggled with what he calls pressure paralysis, the tendency to overthink and hesitate when stakes were highest. His breakthrough came when he started treating pressure not as a threat to manage, but as energy to harness. He developed a pre-dive ritual that transformed anxiety signals into performance triggers. Each physical sensation became a checkpoint on his path to perfect execution. This transformation mirrors what psychologist Kelly McGonigal discovered in her groundbreaking research on stress response. Her studies revealed something fascinating. It wasn't the presence of pressure that determined performance. It was how people interpreted it. Those who viewed stress as helpful experienced dramatically different physiological responses than those who saw it as harmful. Their blood vessels remained relaxed, their hearts worked more efficiently, and most importantly, they maintained clear decision-making abilities under pressure. Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, exemplifies this principle in action. During Spanx's early days, when deadlines and demands threatened to overwhelm her, she developed what she calls her pressure flip technique. Instead of seeing pressure as something crushing down on me, Blakely explains, I started seeing it as energy pushing me forward. The tighter the deadline, the more focused I became. The bigger the challenge, the more creative my solutions. This shift wasn't just psychological, it created measurable changes in her business outcomes. Projects that once stalled under pressure began flowing more smoothly. Decisions that previously caused paralysis became opportunities for swift, decisive action. The pressure was always there, she notes. What changed was how I used it. Marcus Johnson, a sales director in Chicago, discovered this principle the hard way. His quarterly targets kept mounting, and with each increase, his tendency to procrastinate grew worse. I'd see the numbers we needed to hit, and instead of springing into action, I'd freeze, he admits. I was drowning in pressure, using busy work to avoid the big moves I knew we needed to make. Everything changed when Johnson learned about the pressure pivot protocol, a systematic approach to converting pressure from paralysis trigger to performance enhancer. The protocol begins with what he calls pressure mapping, identifying the specific physical and mental signals that indicate mounting pressure. For Johnson, these included tightness in his shoulders, scattered attention, and an urge to check email constantly. Instead of fighting these signals, Johnson learned to use them as activation triggers. When his shoulders tightened, it became a reminder to check his priority list. Scattered attention became his cue to break big targets into smaller, immediate actions. The urge to check email transformed into scheduled communication blocks with his team. The key was stopping the pressure avoidance cycle, Johnson explains. Every time I felt overwhelmed and switched to busy work, I was reinforcing the idea that pressure was something to escape. When I started using pressure signals as action triggers, everything shifted. Within 1 quarter, his team's performance jumped 40%, not because they worked longer hours, but because they stopped wasting energy fighting pressure. This brings us to your challenge, the pressure map exercise. Over the next 3 days, you'll identify 3 recent situations where pressure led you to procrastinate. But instead of just listing them, you'll use the pressure pivot worksheet to decode your pressure response pattern. For each situation, you'll document the physical signals. What did pressure feel like in your body? The mental patterns, what thoughts or worries emerged, and your typical avoidance behaviors. What did you do instead of tackling the pressured task? This creates your personal pressure profile, a crucial first step in transforming your relationship with pressure. Then comes the pivot. For each situation, you'll reframe the pressure signals through the lens of opportunity rather than threat. Those butterflies in your stomach? They're not anxiety. They're your body mobilizing energy for peak performance. That racing mind? It's not overwhelm. It's your brain engaging fully with the challenge at hand. Finally, you'll select one upcoming pressure point in your life, a deadline, presentation, or important decision, and create a specific action plan using your new understanding. The goal isn't to eliminate pressure. That's neither possible nor desirable, but to harness it as the powerful force for action it can be. Remember, pressure isn't your enemy. It's untapped energy waiting to be channeled. The same physiological responses that can trigger paralysis can also fuel your finest performances. It's all in how you interpret and use the signals. As Tom Daly discovered on that Olympic platform, sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come not from fighting pressure, but from letting it propel you forward. Chapter 18. The Laser Focus Principle. Imagine your focus as a laser beam, powerful enough to cut through steel when concentrated, but merely a light show when scattered. This simple truth lies at the heart of why some people seem to accomplish more in a few hours than others manage in a week. It's not about time, it's about the intensity of focus they bring to each moment. I witnessed this principle in action during my visit to Haruki Murakami's writing studio in Japan. The world-renowned author's approach to deep work borders on monastic, yet it's precisely this extreme structure that enables his creative freedom. People think routine kills creativity, Murakami told me, but it's actually the opposite. By removing all decisions about when and how to work, I free my mind to focus entirely on what matters, the writing itself. Murakami's daily schedule is remarkably consistent. He wakes at 4 a.m., writes for 5 to 6 hours straight, then runs 10 kilometers or swims 1,500 meters, sometimes both. What struck me most wasn't the schedule itself, but how this structure eliminated the 1,000 tiny decisions that typically drain our mental energy and lead to procrastination. There's no daily negotiation about when to start working or how long to continue. The boundaries are clear, firm, and non-negotiable. This approach transformed Elena Martinez's life when she discovered it 2 years ago. As a data scientist at a major tech company, Elena struggled with constant context switching. I was drowning in Slack messages, emails, and quick questions from colleagues, she shares. Each interruption felt small, but together they were destroying my ability to do meaningful work. Elena's breaking point came during a critical project deadline. Despite working 12-hour days, she felt perpetually behind. I was busy all the time, but accomplishing nothing of real value. That's when I realized being available all the time meant I was never truly present for anything. Working with her team, Elena developed what she calls the deep work design system. The first step was radical. She began blocking out 3 hours each morning for focused work, marking herself as in deep work on all communication platforms. Initially, this caused some friction. Colleagues accustomed to instant responses had to adjust their expectations. To manage this transition, Elena created clear communication protocols. She set up an autoresponder explaining her deep work schedule and providing alternative contact methods for genuine emergencies. More importantly, she demonstrated that this focused time made her more valuable to the team, not less. When people saw the quality and speed of work I produced during these focused sessions, they not only accepted the boundaries, they started implementing similar practices themselves. The system had 3 core components. First, environmental design. Elena created what she calls a focus trigger routine. Before each deep work session, she would clear her desk, put on noise-canceling headphones, and light a specific candle. Simple actions that trained her brain to enter focus mode. Second, she implemented the 90-minute rule, working in concentrated blocks followed by brief recovery periods, aligning with our natural ultradian rhythm. Finally, she developed a re-entry protocol for transitioning back into collaborative work, preventing the cognitive residue that often lingers after deep focus sessions. The results were transformative. Within 3 months, Elena's productivity metrics showed she was completing complex analyses in half the time, with fewer errors. More surprisingly, her colleagues reported she seemed more available and helpful during collaborative hours, precisely because she wasn't constantly context switching. This brings us to your Focus Foundations challenge. Tomorrow, you'll create one 30-minute deep work session. This might seem modest compared to Murakami's or Elena's practice, but remember, we're building a foundation, not erecting a skyscraper overnight. Using the deep work protocol, First, choose your focus trigger, a simple action or set of actions that will signal to your brain it's time for concentrated work. This could be as simple as closing your door and turning your phone face down, or as elaborate as Elena's complete environmental setup. Next, select your work environment carefully. If possible, find a space where interruptions are unlikely. The goal isn't to maintain this exact setup forever, but to experience what true focus feels like with minimal distractions. Most importantly, choose one specific task for this session. Don't try to tackle your entire to-do list. Pick something meaningful but manageable, a task that requires real concentration but can show progress in 30 minutes. During the session, keep the deep work log nearby. Note when your mind wanders, it will, and what draws it away. Don't judge these distractions, just document them. This information will be invaluable as you refine your deep work practice. After the session, take 5 minutes to reflect in your log. What worked well? What would you adjust? How did it feel to focus deeply for 30 minutes? This isn't about perfection. It's about learning your personal patterns and preferences for focused work. Remember, like the laser beam, your mind's power lies not in how long it can stay on, but in how precisely it can focus when it matters most. Through this challenge, you're taking the first step toward mastering that power, one focused moment at a time. Chapter 19. The Emergency Response Protocol. Houston, we've had a problem. These words, crackling through space on April 13, 1970, marked the beginning of one of history's most remarkable demonstrations of human performance under pressure. The Apollo 13 mission had just experienced a catastrophic oxygen tank explosion, leaving 3 astronauts stranded 200,000 miles from Earth with depleting oxygen and power. What followed wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a masterclass in emergency productivity. The NASA team faced a challenge that would make your tightest deadline seem luxurious. They had to innovate solutions with limited resources, execute them perfectly, and do it all before the astronauts ran out of oxygen. There was no room for procrastination, no time for second-guessing, and absolutely no margin for error. The fascinating part? Under this extreme pressure, the team didn't crack. They excelled. Flight Director Gene Kranz's famous declaration, "Failure is not an option," wasn't just a catchy phrase. It was a mindset that transformed panic into productivity. His team achieved in hours what would normally take months of planning and testing. They literally invented new procedures on the fly, including figuring out how to make square carbon dioxide filters work in round holes, using only materials available on the spacecraft. This same principle of emergency-driven innovation emerged in a completely different context when Danny Meyer faced his own crisis moment. In 2008, as the financial markets crashed, Meyer's restaurant empire faced simultaneous emergencies across multiple locations. Regular management approaches weren't cutting it. He needed something radically different. "We had restaurants bleeding money, staff panicking, and suppliers threatening to cut us off," Meyer shares. "I realized we needed to apply emergency room triage principles to business operations." This insight led him to develop what he calls the Crisis Time Management System, a methodology that would later become standard practice across his organization, even in non-crisis times. Meyer's system centered on 3 core principles: rapid assessment, decisive action, and continuous adaptation. In a crisis, perfect solutions don't exist, he explains. What matters is making good enough decisions quickly, then adjusting based on immediate feedback. This approach saved not only his existing restaurants, but enabled him to expand during the recession, laying the groundwork for Shake Shack's eventual global success. But perhaps the most compelling application of emergency productivity comes from Dr. Lisa Chen's work in the ER. As an emergency physician at one of Chicago's busiest hospitals, Chen regularly makes life-or-death decisions under extreme time pressure. What makes her story particularly relevant is how she translated these high-stakes principles into a methodology anyone can use for their own deadline challenges. The biggest mistake people make under pressure is trying to solve everything at once, Chen explains. In the ER, we have a saying, "Control the bleeding first." This means identifying and addressing the most critical issue before moving on to secondary concerns. She developed this insight into the Rapid Response Protocol, a systematic approach for maintaining clear thinking and decisive action under any type of time pressure. Chen's protocol begins with what she calls the three-breath reset, a quick but powerful technique for shifting from panic to focused action. When a critical trauma case comes in, I take 3 deliberate breaths before entering the room, she shares. It seems simple, but this micropause helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, improving decision-making without causing dangerous delays. The next step involves rapid situation assessment using the CLEAR framework. Current status, life-threatening issues, expected complications, action priorities, and resource needs. Chen adapted this from emergency medicine for general use, making it applicable to any time-critical situation. When I started applying these principles to non-medical challenges, like meeting deadlines for research papers or preparing presentations, I was amazed at how well they transferred, Chen notes. The key is treating every deadline with the same systematic approach we use in the ER, just with adjusted stakes. One of Chen's most successful applications of this method came during a hospital administration crisis. The electronic health record system crashed just before a crucial regulatory audit. Instead of panicking, she applied the Rapid Response Protocol, breaking down the seemingly impossible challenge into clear action steps. First, we identified the absolute must-have documents for the audit. That was our control the bleeding moment, she explains. Then we created a triage system for retrieving and organizing information, just like we do with multiple trauma patients. The result? Not only did they pass the audit, but they also developed new emergency protocols that improved the hospital's overall efficiency. The power of this approach lies in its versatility. Whether you're facing a work deadline, a personal project crunch, or an actual emergency, the principles remain the same. Assess quickly, decide clearly, and act decisively. This brings us to your emergency protocol challenge. Over the next 24 hours, you'll apply these principles to a pressing but manageable task you've been avoiding. Choose something important enough to create real stakes, but not so crucial that failure would be catastrophic. We're building confidence, not courting disaster. Start by using the provided pressure performance log to document your initial state. What's the task? What's the real deadline? What resources do you have available? Then apply the 3-breath reset before beginning your rapid assessment using the CLEAR framework. Remember, the goal isn't perfection. It's effective action under pressure. Document your experience as you go, paying special attention to decision points and adjustments. What triggered stress responses? How did you maintain focus? What worked and what didn't? This isn't just an exercise. It's practical training for future high-pressure situations. Just as NASA's Apollo 13 team turned potential disaster into one of history's greatest success stories, you're developing the skills to transform pressure from an enemy into an ally. The key insight from both Meyer's restaurant crisis and Chen's ER experiences is that pressure doesn't have to be paralyzing. With the right protocol, it can actually enhance performance, cutting through procrastination and forcing clarity of purpose. This is your opportunity to experience that transformation firsthand. As you complete this challenge, you'll discover something powerful. The same urgency that makes emergencies so stressful can also make them incredibly productive. By learning to harness this energy rather than fight it, you're developing a crucial skill for both crisis and everyday productivity. Chapter 20. The Team Momentum Factor. When Google set out to understand what makes some teams excel while others stagnate, they discovered something surprising. Through Project Aristotle, their comprehensive study of team effectiveness, they found that the most productive teams weren't necessarily composed of the most talented individuals. Instead, the key differentiator was how these teams handled collective decision-making and action-taking. More specifically, they discovered that team procrastination, the tendency for groups to delay important decisions and actions, was often more detrimental than individual procrastination. This finding resonated deeply with Toby Lütke, CEO of Shopify, who had been grappling with a similar challenge as his company scaled from a small startup to a global e-commerce giant. We noticed that as we grew, decisions that used to take hours started taking weeks, Lütke shares. It wasn't because our people had become less capable. It was because our team dynamics were accidentally engineered for delay rather than action. Lütke's revelation led to a complete overhaul of how Shopify approached team decision-making. He introduced what he calls the trust battery concept, the idea that every team member starts with a partially charged trust battery that either charges or depletes based on their follow-through on commitments. This simple but powerful metaphor transformed how teams thought about procrastination. Instead of seeing delayed action as merely a personal failure, they began to understand it as a drain on the team's collective trust battery. The most interesting part wasn't the metaphor itself, Lütke explains, but how it changed behavior. When people understood that their procrastination wasn't just affecting their own work, but actively depleting their colleagues' trust batteries, they approached deadlines differently. This shift in perspective led to the development of Shopify's Bias for Action framework, which would later influence how tech companies worldwide approach team productivity. Enter Rebecca Torres, a project manager facing what seemed like an impossible challenge. She had inherited a development team known throughout their organization as the Eventually team, a nickname that wasn't meant as a compliment. Despite being composed of brilliant engineers, the team had a reputation for turning simple 2-week projects into 6-month odysseys. The first thing I realized was that we didn't have a talent problem. We had a momentum problem, Torres recalls. Every decision, no matter how small, turned into an endless debate. Every action item became buried under layers of what-ifs and maybe we shoulds. This realization led her to develop what would become the Team Momentum Framework, a systematic approach to transforming group procrastination into collective action. Torres's framework began with a crucial insight from Project Aristotle. Psychological safety wasn't just about feeling safe to speak up. It also meant feeling safe to act. She noticed that her team's procrastination often stemmed from an unstated fear of making wrong decisions. The solution wasn't to eliminate careful consideration, but to create clear parameters for when discussion should end and action should begin. She implemented what she calls decision boundaries, clear guidelines for determining how much discussion different types of decisions deserve. We categorize decisions into 3 tiers, she explains. Tier 1 decisions were truly irreversible and needed extensive discussion. Tier 2 decisions were important but reversible, requiring limited debate. Tier 3 decisions were easily changeable and needed immediate action. This simple categorization transformed the team's dynamics. Suddenly, there was a shared understanding of when it was time to stop discussing and start doing. But Torres didn't stop there. She also introduced the concept of action windows, designated periods during which the team committed to pure execution mode, postponing all non-emergency discussions. The results were remarkable. Within 3 months, the team's project completion rate tripled. More importantly, the quality of their work improved because they were spending their energy on actual development rather than endless deliberation. The irony was that by limiting discussion time, we actually made better decisions, Torres notes. When people knew they had a finite window for debate, They came prepared with well-thought-out points rather than thinking out loud. The team momentum framework's success caught the attention of other departments, and soon Torres was teaching her methods throughout the organization. She discovered that while the specific implementation might vary between teams, the core principles remained effective across different functions and industries. Key to the framework's success was its acknowledgement of different team members' roles in maintaining momentum. For leaders, this meant mastering the art of productive closure, knowing how to guide discussions to actionable conclusions without making team members feel unheard. For individual contributors, it meant learning constructive advancement, ways to move projects forward even when not every detail was perfectly resolved. Torres developed specific communication templates for both scenarios. Leaders learned to use phrases like, "I'm hearing two viable approaches. Given our timeline, let's test approach A for the next week and evaluate results," rather than leaving discussions open-ended. Individual contributors learned to say, "I can proceed with what we know now and adjust course when we have more information," rather than waiting for perfect clarity. The framework also revolutionized how teams structured their meetings. Torres introduced the concept of momentum meetings, gatherings specifically designed to maintain project velocity. These meetings followed a strict format: 15 minutes for updates, 30 minutes for obstacle removal, and 15 minutes for immediate action items. The key was that no one could leave without clear next steps assigned and scheduled. This brings us to your team momentum challenge. If you're in a leadership position, select one element of the team momentum framework to implement in your next team meeting. This could be introducing decision boundaries, establishing action windows, or restructuring to the momentum meeting format. Document both the immediate reactions and the resulting actions over the next 48 hours. For individual contributors, your challenge is to apply the upward management protocol. This involves identifying one stalled project or delayed decision in your team, then using the provided communication templates to professionally advance the situation. The goal isn't to bypass proper consideration, but to help your team maintain healthy momentum. In both cases, use the structured reflection exercise provided in your momentum mapping worksheet. Pay particular attention to how team dynamics shift when clear action parameters are established. Note both positive responses and resistance. Understanding both is crucial for long-term implementation. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate thoughtful consideration, but to find the right balance between discussion and action. As Google's Project Aristotle revealed, the most effective teams aren't those that move the fastest or discuss the most. They're the ones that know when to do each. Chapter 21: The Art of Sustainable Progress. Imagine standing in the workshop of Master Kobayashi, a renowned bonsai artist whose trees are considered living masterpieces. As he tends to a centuries-old pine, he shares a profound insight. Most people think bonsai is about forcing trees to grow in certain ways, but it's actually about understanding that meaningful change cannot be rushed, yet paradoxically requires daily attention. Miss a day of care, and you might not notice. Miss a month, and you've compromised years of progress. This wisdom extends far beyond the art of bonsai. In our quest to overcome procrastination and build lasting productivity, we often swing between extremes, periods of intense action followed by exhausted inaction. We try to force growth like an impatient gardener pulling on seedlings, instead of creating systems that support natural development while maintaining consistent progress. No one understands this better than Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest hedge fund. While many know Dalio for his investment success, few realize that his greatest innovation wasn't a trading strategy. It was his systematic approach to preventing organizational procrastination. Early in my career, Dalio shares, I noticed that even brilliant people and teams would fall into productivity traps. The problem wasn't individual willpower or talent. It was the lack of systems that could sustain progress, regardless of temporary motivational fluctuations. This realization led Dalio to develop what he calls principles-based productivity, a systematic approach that transformed Bridgewater from a small investment firm into a $140 billion powerhouse. At its core was a revolutionary insight. Sustainable productivity isn't about working harder or faster. It's about creating environments and systems that naturally eliminate the conditions that lead to procrastination. Most productivity systems fail because they rely too heavily on individual discipline, Dalio explains. But willpower is a finite resource. The key is to build systems that make productive action the path of least resistance. This approach led to Bridgewater's unique culture where every process, from decision-making to project management, is designed to prevent institutional procrastination while supporting individual growth. Enter Maya Rodriguez, a tech entrepreneur whose journey from burnout-prone workaholic to sustainable high performer perfectly illustrates these principles in action. As the founder of a rapidly growing software company, Rodriguez found herself trapped in what she calls the productivity pendulum, swinging between periods of intense, unsustainable work and complete exhaustion. "I was the queen of productivity sprints," Rodriguez admits. "I could work 20-hour days for weeks, launching products and closing deals through sheer force of will. But then I'd crash, and nothing would get done for days or even weeks. It wasn't just unsustainable, it was actually holding our company back." Her turning point came after a particularly severe burnout period nearly cost her company a major client. "I realized I was modeling exactly the wrong behavior for my team. We were building a company culture based on heroic efforts rather than sustainable systems." This insight led her to develop the perpetual progress method, a systematic approach to maintaining momentum without depleting personal resources. The first key principle of Rodriguez's method was what she calls energy-aligned action. Instead of forcing herself to maintain the same high intensity every day, she learned to map her work to her natural energy patterns. "I discovered that I had about 4 hours of peak creative energy each morning. Instead of fighting this pattern, I redesigned my entire schedule around it." She developed a simple but effective energy tracking system, noting her mental clarity, creative capacity, and execution ability at different times of day. After a month of data collection, clear patterns emerged. These patterns became the foundation of her new work rhythm, where different types of tasks were matched to different energy states. The breakthrough wasn't just personal, it transformed how we operated as a company, Rodriguez explains. "We started scheduling our most important meetings and strategic work during team-wide peak hours. Routine tasks were shifted to lower energy periods. Suddenly, procrastination decreased because people were working with their natural rhythms rather than against them." The second principle was system-supported progress. Rodriguez realized that relying on motivation or discipline to maintain productivity was like trying to heat a house by running a space heater constantly, expensive, inefficient, and ultimately unsustainable. Instead, she focused on building systems that naturally maintained momentum. She introduced what she calls progress triggers, environmental and procedural cues that automatically initiate productive action. Every workspace was organized to minimize friction for starting important tasks. Team workflows were redesigned to eliminate common stalling points. Even their project management software was customized to support this systematic approach. "We stopped treating productivity as a personal virtue and started seeing it as a system design challenge," Rodriguez notes. "The question wasn't, how do we get people to work harder, but how do we make productive action the easiest choice?" The third principle, sustainable scaling, addressed how to grow without breaking the system. Rodriguez developed a unique approach to expansion that she calls the bonsai method, inspired by the careful, intentional growth of bonsai trees. Just as a bonsai master makes small, regular adjustments rather than dramatic changes, Rodriguez's team learned to scale their efforts through incremental improvements rather than exhausting sprints. This meant establishing clear growth rhythms, regular cycles of action, evaluation, and adjustment. Weekly reviews became opportunities to trim away inefficient processes. Monthly assessments helped shape the direction of growth. Quarterly strategic sessions ensured all growth aligned with long-term sustainability. The results were remarkable. Within a year, her company's productivity metrics showed more consistent progress than ever before, while employee burnout rates dropped dramatically. More importantly, the quality of their work improved because people had the space and energy to think clearly and creatively. The irony is that by slowing down and focusing on sustainability, we actually started moving faster, Rodriguez reflects. It's like the difference between sprinting until you collapse and maintaining a steady pace that lets you cover more ground over time. This brings us to your challenge, the Legacy Map exercise. This isn't just another productivity plan, it's your blueprint for sustainable success. Using the provided framework, you'll outline your ideal productivity system across 3 time horizons: daily rhythms, weekly cycles, and monthly growth patterns. Start by identifying your peak energy periods and natural productivity rhythms. When are you most creative? When is your execution ability highest? When do you naturally slow down? This becomes the foundation of your sustainable system. Next, design your environmental and procedural supports. What triggers can you set up to initiate productive action automatically? How can you organize your workspace and tools to minimize friction? What systems can you put in place to maintain momentum even when motivation fluctuates? Finally, select one keystone habit to begin developing immediately. This isn't about dramatic change. It's about planting the seed of your sustainable system. Choose something small but significant. Something you can maintain consistently even on your worst days. Remember Master Kobayashi's wisdom. Meaningful change cannot be rushed, yet requires daily attention. Your legacy map isn't just about getting more done. It's about creating a sustainable path to long-term success. Like a carefully tended bonsai, your productivity system should grow naturally while maintaining its essential form, supporting progress without forcing it. The true art of sustainable productivity lies not in dramatic transformations, but in the patient cultivation of systems that support natural growth. By understanding and working with your natural rhythms, building supportive environments, and maintaining consistent attention to progress, you can create lasting change that doesn't depend on willpower alone. Your journey towards sustainable productivity starts now, with one small but significant step. Open your Legacy Map template and begin mapping your path to lasting change. Remember, the goal isn't perfection. It's progress that can be maintained and built upon, day after day, year after year. Chapter 22. Breaking Free from Digital Chains. The numbers are staggering, yet they barely scratch the surface of our digital dependency. The average smartphone user touches their phone 2,617 times per day. That's once every 33 seconds during waking hours. Each seemingly innocent check creates a micro-interruption that shatters our attention into fragments too small for meaningful work. This isn't just distraction, it's a form of technological procrastination that has become so normalized we barely notice its crushing impact on our productivity and well-being. Consider this. When you reach for your phone to check just one notification, you're not only losing those few seconds. Research from the University of California shows that it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully regain deep focus after even a brief interruption. Multiply that by dozens of daily checks, and the true cost of our digital dependency becomes clear. We're living in a state of perpetual partial attention, never fully present, never deeply focused. Few understand this better than Tristan Harris, former Google design ethicist, who has been called the closest thing Silicon Valley has to a conscience. During his time at Google, Harris gained intimate knowledge of how tech companies engineer their products to be as addictive as possible. It's not an accident that you can't stop scrolling, Harris explains. These platforms are designed using the same psychological principles as slot machines, variable rewards that keep you checking back, hoping for that next dopamine hit. Harris shares a particularly revealing insight from his time in Silicon Valley. The most successful tech products aren't those that solve our problems best. They're the ones that are best at making us forget our problems exist, even if just for a moment. This temporary escape becomes a form of procrastination, offering brief relief from discomfort while actually compounding our challenges. But Harris didn't just identify the problem. He developed specific strategies to maintain focus despite understanding these manipulation techniques. The key insight was realizing that willpower isn't enough, he notes. You can't out-discipline technology that's specifically engineered to break your discipline. You need systems that protect your attention at a structural level. This understanding led Harris to develop what he calls attention protection protocols. Systematic approaches to using technology mindfully rather than reactively. Instead of trying to resist the pull of digital distraction through sheer willpower, he created environmental and behavioral frameworks that made focused work the path of least resistance. Enter James Chen, a novelist whose struggle with digital distraction nearly derailed his writing career. I was the classic example of someone who knew better, but couldn't seem to do better, Chen admits. I'd sit down to write, and 4 hours later, I'd find myself deep in a YouTube rabbit hole, having written exactly 0 words. Chen's turning point came after missing a crucial publishing deadline because of what he calls digital procrastination spirals. This wake-up call led him to develop the Digital Defense System, a comprehensive approach to transforming technology from a distraction into a tool for focused work. The first component of Chen's system was what he calls digital environment design. Rather than trying to resist temptation, he completely restructured his digital workspace to eliminate distractions before they could occur. I realized I was setting myself up for failure by trying to write on a device connected to the internet, he explains. It's like trying to diet while sitting in a candy store. You might succeed through willpower for a while, but eventually you'll give in. Chen's solution was radical but effective. He purchased a basic laptop stripped of all unnecessary software and internet capability, which became his dedicated writing machine. The initial investment seemed expensive, he notes, but when I calculated how much productive time I was losing to digital distraction, it became clear that I couldn't afford not to make this change. But Chen's transformation went beyond just creating a distraction-free writing environment. He developed what he calls the Focus First Protocol, a systematic approach to managing digital interactions throughout his day. Instead of checking emails and social media first thing in the morning, he established a strict policy of completing at least 2 hours of focused creative work before engaging with any online platforms. This simple change had profound effects, Chen explains. Not only did my productivity skyrocket, but I found myself feeling more centered and less anxious throughout the day. Starting with deep work, rather than digital distraction, set a completely different tone for everything that followed. The third element of Chen's system addressed what he calls digital transition points, those moments when we shift between online and offline activities. He noticed that these transitions often triggered procrastination spirals, as a quick check could easily turn into hours of mindless scrolling. To combat this, Chen developed specific routines for entering and exiting digital spaces. Before checking email or social media, he would set a clear intention and time limit. More importantly, he established concrete exit triggers, specific cues that would signal it was time to disconnect and return to focused work. The key was making these transitions conscious rather than unconscious, Chen notes. By creating clear boundaries around my digital interactions, I transformed them from potential procrastination triggers into controlled tools for specific purposes. The results of Chen's digital defense system were remarkable. Within 6 months, he had completed his novel, a task that had previously seemed impossible amidst constant digital distraction. More importantly, he had developed a sustainable approach to using technology that supported rather than sabotaged his creative work. This brings us to your challenge, the Screen-Free Success Challenge. For the next 5 days, you'll select 1 hour of your typical workday and transform it into a complete technology blackout zone. This means no phones, no computers, no tablets, nothing with a screen. Use the provided digital detox log to record both your struggles and discoveries during this time. The goal isn't to permanently abandon technology, it's to reset your relationship with digital tools and reclaim your ability to focus deeply. During your screen-free hour, notice how your mind responds to the absence of constant stimulation. Pay attention to any urges to check devices and what triggers these urges. Most importantly, observe how your productivity and creativity shift when you're fully present with your work. The digital detox log includes space to record not just what you accomplish during your screen-free hour, but also how you feel before, during, and after. This documentation is crucial because it helps you identify patterns in your digital dependency and celebrate the benefits of focused attention. Many participants in this challenge report surprising discoveries. Some find that their anxiety decreases significantly when they're not constantly available. Others notice a dramatic improvement in their ability to think deeply and creatively. Almost everyone is shocked by how frequently they habitually reach for their phones, even during this short period of conscious disconnection. Remember, the goal isn't to demonize technology, it's to establish a healthier relationship with our digital tools. By creating this small oasis of focused attention in your day, you begin to rebuild your capacity for deep work while weakening the grip of digital distraction. Your screen-free hour is more than just an exercise in productivity. It's a declaration of independence from the constant pull of digital procrastination. Choose your hour thoughtfully, prepare your environment carefully, and approach the challenge with curiosity rather than judgment. What you discover during these focused periods may well transform how you approach both technology and productivity in all areas of your life. Chapter 23. The Power of Microactions. The year was 1964, and Richard Feynman faced what seemed like an impossible challenge. As one of the world's leading physicists, he wasn't struggling with complex quantum mechanics or theoretical mathematics. He was paralyzed by the simple act of beginning his next research paper. The solution he discovered would not only transform his approach to work, but would eventually influence productivity methods for generations to come. Feynman realized that the enormity of his projects wasn't the real problem. It was his perception of their size that created paralysis. Instead of trying to tackle the entire paper at once, he developed what he called his tiny steps protocol. He would commit to working for just 5 minutes, focusing on the smallest possible component of the larger task. Physics is like sex, he would later quip. Sure, it may give some practical results, but that's not why we do it. We do it because we enjoy it. And you can only enjoy something when it doesn't feel overwhelming. This seemingly simple insight led to one of the most productive periods of his career, culminating in the Nobel Prize in Physics. But more importantly, it revealed a fundamental truth about human productivity. Momentum doesn't require massive action. It requires consistent micro-actions that build upon each other. James Clear, while researching for his breakthrough book, Atomic Habits, discovered something fascinating about Feynman's approach. It wasn't just about breaking tasks down, it was about creating what Clear calls success triggers, where completing one small action, automatically cues the next. During the writing of his own bestseller, Clear faced a familiar challenge, balancing the demands of his growing business and speaking career with the need for focused writing time. Everyone talks about my 2-minute rule, Clear shares, but what really transformed my productivity was understanding the psychology of momentum. Each small win creates a subtle shift in your self-image, making the next action not just easier, but almost inevitable. Clear developed a system he called success stacking, where he would deliberately chain small actions together in a way that created unstoppable momentum. For example, instead of trying to block out entire days for writing, Clear would start with a commitment so small it seemed almost laughable, opening his writing document and typing a single sentence. The key insight was realizing that the hardest part isn't writing, it's starting to write, he explains. Once I removed the pressure of having to write a lot and focused instead on just initiating the process, everything changed. This approach led to a remarkable discovery. On days when he committed to writing just one sentence, he would typically end up writing for hours. The micro-action of starting created a natural momentum that carried him forward. More importantly, because the initial commitment was so small, he never felt the resistance that often leads to procrastination. Enter Priya Patel, a software developer whose story perfectly illustrates the transformative power of micro-actions. Despite being highly skilled, Priya found herself consistently procrastinating on important projects, letting crucial deadlines slip while she remained stuck in planning mode. I was the queen of elaborate productivity systems, she admits. I had beautiful Trello boards, color-coded calendars, and detailed project plans. But none of it mattered because I couldn't get past the initial resistance of starting. Priya's turning point came when she discovered what she would later call the momentum multiplier method. Instead of trying to overhaul her entire workflow at once, she focused on identifying the smallest possible action that would move each project forward. For coding projects, this meant committing to writing just one line of code. For documentation tasks, it meant writing a single paragraph. The breakthrough wasn't just in breaking tasks down, Priya explains. It was in understanding how to create chains of micro-actions that built upon each other naturally. She developed a system where each small completion would automatically trigger the next action, creating what she calls success spirals. For example, when starting a new feature for her team's app, instead of thinking about the entire development process, she would focus on writing just one test case. Once that was complete, she would naturally want to write the code to make that test pass. After the test passed, she would feel compelled to add documentation for what she had just built. Each step flowed naturally from the one before it, creating momentum without conscious effort. The results were remarkable. Within 6 months, Priya had not only cleared her backlog of delayed projects, but had also developed a reputation as one of her team's most reliable developers. The irony is that by committing to doing less, I ended up accomplishing far more, she notes. When you remove the pressure of having to do everything at once, you free yourself to actually begin. Priya's system had 3 key components that made it particularly effective. First was what she called success anchors, specific, incredibly small actions that would serve as entry points for larger projects. These weren't just random small tasks. They were carefully chosen to create natural momentum toward the next step. The second component was her trigger tracking system. Instead of focusing on completing tasks, she paid attention to what naturally motivated her to continue working after completing each micro-action. This allowed her to design her workflow around these natural momentum points, making continued progress almost automatic. The third element was what she termed victory validation, a simple but powerful practice of celebrating each micro-completion, no matter how small. Most people wait to celebrate until they've achieved something big, she explains. but I discovered that celebrating tiny wins actually creates the emotional fuel needed for bigger achievements. This brings us to your challenge, the Success Spiral Sprint. Over the next 24 hours, you'll identify 3 tasks you've been avoiding. Tasks that seem small enough that your procrastination almost feels ridiculous. These should be genuine 5-minute tasks, not arbitrary divisions of larger projects. Write these tasks down, but don't stop there. For each task, identify the smallest possible first action, something so tiny it feels almost meaningless. Maybe it's opening a document, writing a single email sentence, or making one phone call. The key is that these actions should take no more than 30 seconds to complete. Now comes the crucial part. You'll complete these micro-actions within the next 24 hours, but with a specific twist. After each completion, you'll immediately share your success with either an accountability partner or a social media group using the hashtag #SuccessSpiral. This social sharing component isn't just about accountability. It's about creating external validation that reinforces your momentum. The power of this challenge lies not just in completing the tasks, but in experiencing firsthand how small actions can create disproportionate results. Pay particular attention to how you feel after completing each micro-action. Notice the natural urge to continue beyond your initial commitment. This is the momentum effect in action. As you work through this challenge, use the provided momentum mapping template to document your experience. Note not just what you complete, but also any unexpected actions that naturally followed your initial micro steps. This documentation will help you identify your personal momentum triggers, the specific types of small actions that most effectively generate continued progress in your work. Remember, the goal isn't just to complete 3 small tasks. It's to develop a deeper understanding of how momentum works in your own productivity system. These insights will become invaluable as you apply the momentum multiplier method to larger projects and longer-term goals. Through this process, you'll discover something powerful. Procrastination often dissolves not through grand interventions or elaborate systems, but through the simple act of taking the smallest possible step forward. Each micro-action you complete rewires your relationship with task initiation, gradually transforming you from a procrastinator into an initiator. Your success spiral starts now. Choose your 3 5-minute tasks, identify your micro-actions, and prepare to experience the extraordinary power of starting small. Remember, as Richard Feynman discovered, the size of your initial action doesn't matter. What matters is that you begin. Chapter 24. Your future self is calling. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture yourself exactly 1 year from today. You're sitting in your favorite spot, a quiet place where you do your best thinking. In your hands is this very book, worn from use, its pages marked with insights and revelations. But something is different about you. The weight of perpetual procrastination has lifted. The constant battle between what you should do and what you actually do has transformed into a harmonious flow of purposeful action. This isn't just a visualization exercise. It's a glimpse into a very possible future. The person you're seeing isn't some idealized version of yourself, but rather the natural evolution of someone who has learned to work with their brain instead of against it. This future self has discovered something profound. Procrastination was never the enemy. It was simply a misunderstood ally in your journey toward growth. Michelle Obama faced this exact realization while writing her memoir, Becoming. Despite her remarkable achievements and discipline in other areas of life, she found herself struggling with what she calls the paralysis of the blank page. The former First Lady, known for her powerful speeches and decisive leadership, would spend hours reorganizing her desk, answering emails, or doing anything else to avoid facing the vulnerability of putting her story on paper. "I kept waiting for the perfect moment," The perfect words, she reveals. Then one day I realized something that changed everything. My future self was waiting for me to get out of my own way. This insight led her to develop what she called her future self-focus technique, a method that would not only help her complete her memoir, but would transform her entire approach to procrastination. Instead of focusing on the immediate discomfort of starting, Obama began each writing session by connecting with her future self, the Michelle who had already completed the book, who had shared her story with millions, who had inspired countless others to share their own truths. I wasn't just writing for myself anymore, she explains. I was writing for the person I would become, and more importantly, for all the people that person would impact. This shift in perspective created what psychologists call temporal motivation, the ability to override present discomfort by connecting deeply with future benefits. But Obama took this concept further, developing a systematic approach to making this connection tangible and immediate. Each morning, before opening her laptop, she would spend 5 minutes in dialogue with her future self. I would literally have conversations with the Michelle who had already finished the book, she shares. I would ask her what she was most proud of, what challenges she overcame, what impact the book was having. These weren't just daydreams, they were strategy sessions with my most successful self. This practice didn't just make writing easier, it transformed her relationship with procrastination entirely. The urge to delay didn't disappear, but it lost its power. When faced with the choice between immediate comfort and future impact, the decision became clearer, more purposeful. Enter David Liu, an architect whose story perfectly illustrates how this future-focused approach can revolutionize not just individual tasks, but entire careers. Liu had built a successful practice, but found himself constantly caught in what he called the deadline spiral. Procrastinating until time pressure forced action, delivering projects at the last minute, then feeling too drained to break the cycle. I was surviving, but I wasn't creating the legacy I knew I was capable of, Liu admits. Every project felt like a race against time, rather than an opportunity to make a lasting impact. His turning point came when he discovered what he would later call the Legacy Launch Protocol, a systematic approach to connecting daily tasks with long-term vision. Liu's protocol began with a simple but powerful exercise. For each project, he would fast forward 20 years and imagine someone experiencing the space he was designing. I stopped thinking about deadlines and started thinking about destinies, he explains. How would this building shape the lives of the people who used it? What stories would they tell about their time there? What memories would be created within these walls? This wasn't just positive thinking, it was strategic visualization with immediate practical applications. Liu developed a 3-part system for transforming this future focus into present action. First was what he called legacy linking, connecting every task, no matter how small, to its long-term impact. Even mundane activities like reviewing building codes became meaningful when viewed as essential steps toward creating spaces that would touch thousands of lives. The second component was future self-feedback, a daily practice of evaluating current decisions from the perspective of his future self. Before procrastinating on any task, Liu would ask himself a simple question. What would my future self wish I had done in this moment? This created what psychologists call temporal consistency, aligning present actions with future values. The final element was the impact inventory, a running list of ways his work would affect others over time. This wasn't just about buildings, it was about the communities they would serve, the relationships they would foster, the moments they would witness. By maintaining this inventory, Liu transformed procrastination from a tempting escape into a barrier between him and his desired legacy. The results were transformative. Within 6 months, Liu had not only broken his deadline-driven cycle, but had also begun taking on more ambitious projects that aligned with his vision of architectural legacy. The irony is that by focusing less on immediate deadlines and more on long-term impact, I actually became more productive, he notes. When you're connected to your future purpose, procrastination loses its appeal. This brings us to your final challenge in this journey, the tomorrow letter. This isn't just another writing exercise. It's your first communication with your future self, the person you're becoming through the changes you've initiated. Find a quiet space where you won't be interrupted. Take a few deep breaths and center yourself in this moment of transition. Now, open a new document or take out a fresh piece of paper. Dated exactly 1 month from today. Begin your letter with these words. Dear your name. When you read this letter in 1 month, these are the changes you'll have experienced. Write about the specific strategies from this book that you've implemented. Be detailed about what's different in your daily routine, your thought patterns, your relationship with time and tasks. Describe how these changes have affected not just your productivity, but your sense of purpose and possibility. But don't stop at describing changes. Articulate your next steps. What new challenges will you take on? What bigger goals feel possible now that you've developed a healthier relationship with action and delay? Remember, this isn't just a wish list. It's a blueprint for your continuing evolution. Set a calendar reminder right now to read this letter in 30 days. This isn't just about accountability. It's about creating a moment of reflection and celebration, a checkpoint in your ongoing journey of transformation. As you seal this letter, either literally or digitally, take a moment to appreciate how far you've come. The person who opened this book is not the same person closing it. You've developed a new understanding of procrastination, acquired practical tools for managing it, and most importantly, begun to see yourself as someone capable of consistent, purposeful action. Conclusion. Looking back at where we started this journey together, I'm reminded of a profound truth. The greatest transformations often begin with a simple shift in perspective. When you first opened these pages, procrastination likely felt like an enemy to be vanquished, a flaw to be fixed, or a habit to be broken. Now you understand it for what it truly is, a sophisticated feedback system designed to guide you toward your highest potential. Think of it like discovering that what you thought was a wall blocking your path was actually a door waiting to be opened with the right key. Through the Momentum Matrix, ITM system, you've gained not just a key, but an entire framework for understanding and working with your natural rhythms, rather than against them. This brings to mind a conversation I had with Michael Chen last month, 5 years after his initial transformation. The biggest surprise, he told me, wasn't just turning my startup around or reaching that $50 million valuation. It was realizing that productivity isn't about forcing yourself to work harder. It's about understanding your internal operating system. Michael went on to share how he maintains his momentum today. I still use the 5-second reset every morning, especially for tasks that feel overwhelming. But now it's not just a technique, it's part of how I think. When I feel that urge to procrastinate, I don't fight it. I decode it. Sometimes it's telling me to step back and strategize. Other times it's pointing out that I need to break a task down further. The key is that I'm no longer at war with myself. This perfectly illustrates why traditional productivity advice so often fails. It's like trying to force a river to flow upstream. You can push against the current with all your might, but you'll only exhaust yourself in the process. True transformation comes from understanding the river's natural flow and working with it to reach your destination. Think about how far you've come. Through strategic procrastination, you've learned to distinguish between destructive delay and productive pause. The pressure progress paradox has shown you how to transform deadline stress into focused action. And with the 5-second reset, you possess a powerful tool for breaking through inertia in any situation. But these aren't just techniques, they're keys to understanding your own internal guidance system. When used together, they form a comprehensive approach to turning your delayed dreams into daily reality. The procrastination that once felt like your greatest weakness has been revealed as your untapped superpower, waiting to be unleashed. Now, I want to be clear about something. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of a new way of living. You've unlocked the code to your own operating system. You understand that procrastination isn't your enemy. It's valuable feedback from your brain about what needs attention, adjustment, or recalibration. This brings us to your final challenge, and I want you to take this seriously. Within the next hour, not tomorrow, not later, but in the next 60 minutes, identify the single most important task you've been avoiding. You know the one. It's that project, decision, or conversation that keeps nagging at the edges of your consciousness. Now, apply the 5-second reset. Not as a technique you're testing, but as the transformed person you've become. Someone who understands that action isn't about forcing yourself, but about flowing with your natural rhythms of productivity. Your time is now. Not because you've conquered procrastination, but because you've learned to decode it. You've transformed what was once your greatest perceived weakness into your hidden source of power. The waiting is over. Your new life begins in this moment. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember, you're capable of so much more than you know. Now take the next step and make it happen.